Hello, hello, hello! It's book time! It's so exciting, isn't it? You know, book time. How's everybody doing? Wait, I got to say hello. I could hear some notifications I was missing as the stream was starting. Oh wait, Antux, thank you so much for subscribing for 11 months. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the book you get out the library. Wait, you were speedy with redeeming now. That was before I was even here. Newman. I turquoise first to arrive, very speedy. Welcome in, welcome in. Hi Dem, hi Mandy, hi Yazan, hi Petito. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I seem to have veered slightly into the wall. Let me shuffle. Trying to keep face tracking working whilst looking between two monitors and getting distracted by my food is a difficult task that I do not succeed at. But welcome in. I hope everyone's excited here once again, having not read the books. That's okay. We review without spoilers, so you can maybe listen and decide if you want to read the books or not. And if you want to, I have physical copies of both the ones this month, so I can lend them to you. So that's bonus. Library in action, honestly. Happy Sunday, yeah, happy Sunday everyone. I hope everyone's had a good weekend. I will say, I'm missing it being a 2-day weekend instead of a 4-day weekend. I think 4-day weekend was good. I am no longer in favour of the 4-day work week. I'm now 3-day work week, 4-day weekend. This is my campaign. Hi Dust, welcome in, welcome in. Kai, why are you calling me a cat? What is this treachery? How could I have ever seen it coming? Bold of you to assume I can read? That's not true. I am fairly confident that you have read. What's the name of it? Wait. No, not the online one. My brain's falling out of my ears. Very excited to see what I'm going to be accused of. No, this is unquestionably true. No, I did the words are sitting at the edge of my sanity. It's online series was published over time. One of our friends read it in secret as a prank to say, "Oh yeah, I finished reading this as a joke." IG can stick around. I want to say hi to the librarian. Oh, thank you for stopping by. Have a great rest of your day. I hope whatever you are venturing out for goes well. I would never read Homestuck. That's the one! I was just like, I know there's a character called Strider in it, and that's all I got. It's an online format. In my brain, the word Homestuck is just a kind of chaotic internet reference. I forgot that was the name of the actual series. Oh my gosh. Wait. But yes, today we will not be reviewing Homestuck. We are going to be going through 2 books, which are the ones we selected for this month, which were The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Smith, and then The Fall of Barbarians of the Gate brackets The Fall of J.R.J. Nabasco by 2 authors whose names I actually need to double check, which is a bit of a miss of me having just finished the book. But by Brian Rowe and John Haler, I think. I'm guessing that's how that would be said. But we will be joined by our regular library co-host, Kai the cat. Yeah, Kai the cat. I believe. But yeah, I was just going to mention, I know there's been a bit of chaos, and so this isn't on the day that we'd originally intended, but ISPs are evil sometimes, and so we make do. The plan is to go back to having book club be on the third Saturday of the month, so it'll be a 3-week period for next time, which may be worth bearing in mind in terms of what books to vote for. I don't think there's that many that are super long of the ones nominated, at least none that none that are like a Way of Kings kind of, you go into it knowing it's going to take a year sort of thing. I don't need to jump. Welcome in, Kai. Hello? How are you doing? Wait, why are you quiet? That's... Oh, say hello. I just had you muted.
Hello.
Wait, let me get your
It
little
is
Fugi. It is little
the
hologram.
naughty cat.
Could be a cat. It could be a cat operating a hologram.
Provably not a cat.
I would say I'm provably not a cat, and that's not stop the vicious rumors.
If I speak, I'm in trouble.
Okay. Are you excited to get started on the reviews for this month?
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel
No,
like the first one's gonna be an awkward start, but it's okay. I've got notes on it.
It's always awkward to talk about a book you DNF'd.
Yeah. Alrighty, I think with that side prompt, we should jump into... Oh, hi Jake, thank you for the hydrate. My hydrate's bubble tea today, which is very exciting, so...
Ooh.
Thank you.
No, I want bubble tea.
I hope there's not like
A little
egregiously
bubble tea.
loud straw noises from there, but thank you for the stretch too.
Was first but in a match in DBD. Likely story.
The sacrifices we make for the hatchet shenanigans. But yes, we're gonna do the spoiler-free review of Priory of the Orange Tree, which I suppose is well suited. I probably should have checked before stream started. Kai, are you intending to like dip out for the spoiler review part, because
Oh no.
you
Okay, so
DNF'd this book, didn't you?
I did DNF it. I also then went and watched reviews because I liked some of it, but I wanted. Okay, I only read half of the book. I went 400 pages in
I was
of an
about to say,
800-page book.
half of the book, 400 pages is still a book in many cases.
Yeah, it was still quite a lot.
I didn't realize it was 800 pages when we picked it.
I didn't either. I'm not gonna lie to you. I DNF'd it at 400 pages, but I went and looked at reviews because I wanted to know. I liked enough of the book to want to try it again. But I wanted to see if what I am expecting in the next half of the book is what it is, so that I can see when I want to try it again. Like, in what mood I need to be to keep going. Because, like, if at page, like, 500, boom, it's different, I have to be in a different mood to do it. So
Yeah.
I know actually everything about the book.
Okay.
I essentially... I can spoiler review it as if I read it. I just didn't read it.
Should we go to the regular spoiler review section then? So, my first thought on it is that it has one of the best opening chapters I've read in a while for a high fantasy book.
It is so good.
And I think something which is my favorite part about this book is how it picks up these interconnected threads and make you feel invested in what's going to happen to them, even if you don't like or approve of the mission the characters on that you're following. Like it's really good at making you be invested in characters even when they're not necessarily ones you align with.
I do agree. I also a thing with this book is specifically talking about that first chapter and how well it is. It might be one of my favorites since something like Mistborn, for like a standalone feeling book that just does so well of just instantly grabbing you and getting you along with them. It is really good. And as a standalone book in that regard, it is phenomenal how invested it gets you into a world that you know literally nothing about.
Yep. I think something which I was kind of blown away about is the fact that realizing in quick succession that for the first, I'd say, 200 pages, there is absolutely nothing to tie the characters together that you're reading about.
Yep.
Bar two, and then it's like by one common association with no direct interaction, and you still cared about all of them. I will say, and I'm saying this in vague terms, I'll go into more details in the spoiler review section. I do think there were times where the book would communicate something to one character to whom it was not of importance, and then reference something that indicated that was true for another character to make you realize who it affected on one of the other storylines. And I think sometimes it didn't give enough weight to the moments where it tied back into the other character. I think sometimes the how do I phrase it? The kind of signal to tie the strings together between the different parts of the story was a bit too light at some points, at least in terms of the pacing and the time it was given. Oh, hi, Sana. Welcome in.
I will say something I really love about talking about the characters specifically. Something I really like about the characters is how, I don't know if this is for you too or how much it keeps going. From what I saw, it does keep going. But there's things about all of these characters that you do not like and kind of have issues with for most of them. For me, one of the only characters that didn't do that is Iad, who,
Yes.
and I really like that. I like that these feel like people. Even with friends in real life, there are things that they do that annoy you, and this feels like that, and it kind of drags you along through them to keep going and keep. I really like how the characters in this book feel.
I agree with that one. I think one of my favorite parts of it was actually following a character who I didn't particularly like, who I don't suppose this is spoilers to say the name of one of the characters whose perspectives we follow, but was the Doctor.
Oh yeah.
My brain's blanked on the name as soon as I said I was going to say it. Nicolay Ruse.
Yeah.
Following his perspective, I was deeply invested in the kind of context of his life and what it told you about the kingdoms and specifically their relations, because he had the most formative perspective as the kind of structure of the related parties early on in the book and how the characters link together. And so I found I was often looking forward to the sections of the book written from his perspective, even though I was absolutely not rooting for this man. But yeah, it was a really good. How do I phrase it? I feel like I would love to read a book of short stories by the same author, because the setup and framing of ideas and them having a hook to bring you in is brilliant. I cannot sing enough praises to how much the first chapter of the book made me want to keep reading.
Same. I'm also really excited. Sorry, for this author specifically. So they didn't. This is a standalone book, right?
Yes.
It's not going to get continued in the future. They did do 2 prequels that are standalone prequels. They did a book 0.5 and a book 0 that are both set before the Priory of the Orange Tree. And this makes me want to read some of that, because I think some of the character work in some of those that influence how we get to these, specifically for Roos, Nicholas Roos, I want to see how this character gets to where he is.
Oh, I would be so heartbroken reading that book, but I do slightly want to. Okay. I have to wait to the spoiler section to talk about that, but I was very. Oh. Okay. Yep.
That's where I'm excited for stuff with this. Is I'm excited to see more just short stories, or how we got to where we got, how characters like Nicholas got to where he ends up, to get to, or where we start with him, how he gets to where we start with him. That would slap. I'm kind of excited for that, because general thing for me, I feel like the character work in this is probably the thing it does best, minus one thing. I think the world building in this world is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think my favorite part about this book was partially the initial thread, the like hook to the book, the first few chapters. The world building, I think, is very well done. I really like how none of the characters are perfect, but they all improve.
Yeah.
I think that's a very nice and balanced way, because even if they don't all improve in the same way, and yeah, I like the depiction of flawed characters and flawed characters changing throughout the book. I also just think I like a lot of the themes that run throughout the book, which I'm going to talk about them in general terms, but the themes of ideas of religion and kind of confidence and faith in how that sways international politics in a high fantasy setting, I think is very interesting, and how legends that are believed to be real and not folklore shape the world, which I love as themes, and so I'm always going to be excited about books that play with that as a big concept. One thing which I would kind of gripe on, which I think I referenced a little bit earlier, is the book does a really good job of making the world feel lived in and tying all the threads together. However, it does sometimes feel like the amount of time building up the world is greater than the time spent describing what happens in the world, in the sense of it feels like as much time and literary weight is given to some of the major plot events as is character building, but kind of anecdotal early on experiences. And so the book is quite long, 800 pages, and it's not necessarily a light read. It's not like heavy and accessible prose or anything, but there's enough things going on that I wouldn't say it's kind of something you skim read.
No.
And it almost felt like, for the level of detail and almost tapestry construction that went into the first third of the book, that the last third was rushed slightly, at least from my perspective.
Yeah. So
Hi,
that gets
Silver
into
Lining.
why
Oh, come in. Sorry.
that gets into why I DNF'd it.
Mm-hmm.
Is a lot of it feels like there's a lot. The most of the book, up until like 400 pages, even now, a lot of it isn't. There isn't a lot of forward drive in the story. It kind of sits and builds the world out for a lot of that middle section.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really get to. And then what I've heard and what I've seen on the next part is like the last steps of the book is just like, boom, now we're plot. It's all just the plot, guys. Zoof.
Yeah.
I was
It's
just not in a space to sit and read a world building catalog for a bit.
That's fair. I think, how do I phrase it? I absolutely enjoyed the kind of world building and framing aspects of the book that allowed you to have the characters be believable and their actions be consistent to the end. Because one thing which I did really like about the book, similar to the characters all being flawed and improving, is the characters were consistent. The only times where I thought, oh, I don't believe that happened, was at the start of the book when I didn't know the characters well, and I was just basing it off not expecting them to be as nuanced as they are. So there was times with, particularly with Iad and Silyard, where I was expecting one or the other to be more kind of prejudiced against the other, or hostile with the other, and then they weren't, and I was like, oh, that's not what I expected. That's interesting. And then it justified that more nuanced structure of character.
No, I do want to read this. I do want to finish reading this. I do think it's a very interesting book.
Oh, Alvin and the Egg, thank you for the follow. Welcome to the library. Sorry, continue, Kai. Keep going.
No, it is a very interesting, as a standalone book, to build a world this complex and complicated and this fleshed out, because like there's a lot in this world, build wise and character wise. There's like myths, legends, there's like full family lines, There's like everything in here.
Yep.
Um,
I feel
and
like
that in 800 pages is like a masterful work that I want to see how they kind of did this.
yeah.
And that on top of really solid characters.
Hmm.
That's the weird part to me. Is like usually when you have a book like this, when something like this happens, where it's like something like, and I some people might be annoyed that I said it's like Malazan, where Malazan is now a series, but Malazan is a book about a world. Malazan was made to flesh out this massive world.
Hmm.
um, Character writing can suffer under it. And I think, at least in my opinion, Malazan does suffer under the characters does suffer under exactly what the world becomes. Where this, the characters feel as well done as the world in a lot of ways, which I think is amazing.
Yeah. I do think I I do like a lot of the things about this book. And I think I want to reread it at some point. Um it is, to me, it's at least a 4-star book. For the first 200 pages, I thought it was going to be my first 5-star book of the year, which I've not been. I don't get 5-star books very often. I'm not the biggest fan of the star rating, but I know it's easy to kind of summarize opinions,
Yeah,
especially in the spoiler review section. It's more easy to be vague about criticisms on like structure and narrative than it is to talk in detail about the parts you love. But I do feel like it is the pacing of the book. And I don't mind a book being slow, and I don't mind just reading world building. I loved reading world building for the first 300, 400 pages. I started feeling partway through, for the level of detail, for all these threads to tie together, there's going to have to be a mad dash rush at the end. And then there was. And it
yeah,
felt like it was a little bit hurried for the detail and care the first part of the book had had. And I'm sure there's intent behind the fact that the weight was put on the steps it takes to get to the kind of conclusion of events rather than the events themselves from a narrative and author's perspective, because it does feel like the book is written very carefully and intentionally. But
yeah,
it did feel ever so slightly jarring to go from a pleasant but slow paced world building book to a fast dash action book just
yeah,
right at the very end. Which is my only criticism. I think I don't know how you would have paced out the events towards the end outside of just separating them so that it didn't all tie together at once and they appeared in different parts throughout the process, which I suppose would mean fundamentally changing the structure of the book. But
yes,
I did enjoy it. Um, I will say, I think there's at least 5 or 6 characters who I would be interested to read about the perspective of and life story on, both before and after the Book of the Priory, in terms of prequels or sequels if they ever get made. My ever-growing vendetta is I get grumpy when I read a really good book and then find out that it's in a series, and that I actually have to read another 10 books and I've been tricked. Um,
yeah,
which
same.
I think that there's a value to standalone books, and I'm really excited to read a book that I think is good and complete but still leaves me interested in the world. Um, and so I always have big props from that.
Yeah, same. I value a lot in how this is a standalone book and does all of this in a a long book, but a book.
Yeah,
Um, it's long, but it's a book.
it's a
Um,
book, yeah.
I can't say that. I read Brandon Sanderson books. I can't say that. I suggest Brandon Sanderson books. I'm not allowed to critique 848 pages. I would be happy if one of the Stormlight archives was longer than that. So I'm not allowed to say anything. Um, And as a standalone, I think it works really well. It does what it needs to do. Speaking about like you talking about that last like part of the book and how rushed it is,
Mhm.
the the problem with it is I think there's two solutions to it, and both don't work well. So I kind of understand why they did it like this, where you either have to do what you suggested and like don't make them tie as well together and like kind of put this like just stretch them out a bit, or you just stretch out that last part. But then you start getting to like 1,000-page book, and that's a bit much.
I will say something
Where you
which I
kind
have
of
to
like,
say is a criticism for the book, which ties directly into that, is the copy that I have has an absolutely beautiful cover and it has a 3-page map in. However, because of the type of
oh,
binding the book has, and because it's over 800 pages, especially because the copy I had a list of all the characters and brief descriptions of them at the back, which I do appreciate for books like this, and I did have to reference at a few points at the beginning. But because of how the book's binded, it's the name of the bindings slipped my mind, but it's one where you have around a centimeter of offset pages that are just glued together, and then the central binding around it,
yeah,
like a semi-hardcover binding, but in a softback.
yeah.
Because of how it was bound, you couldn't actually read the innermost part of the map because the map had been printed edge to edge on the pages it was printed over, and so several of the names of the cities were completely illegible because it was hidden within the binding indent for the book, which I was ecstatic to see a
That's annoying.
3-page map because I love it. Maps in fantasy or sci-fi books are just green flags to me, but I was a little bit disappointed by that, and I thought that logistically that's probably something that should have been reviewed. Um, but yeah, I will say it's a good method of printing for long books, but you do just have to be careful when printing things like maps or art onto the pages, because the
Yeah.
spine didn't really break at all. I think over the course of reading,
Oh, that's not bad.
yeah, I am pretty
That's
careful
nice.
with books, but yeah. Um, but yeah, I was just always slightly grumpy about that because I was like, I'm so excited about this map. I can't read that city name or that city name or that city name. But
Yeah, that's kind of sad. When I heard map, I was like, yes, yes, yes. But that's kind of sad.
yeah,
That's almost worse than not getting a map. Is getting a map you can't read half the city names on.
if it helps, it turned out to be cities that weren't particularly important, so maybe it was done intentionally. But yeah.
Oh, that makes it worse. That makes it worse. I want to know the irrelevant city names more than the ones that we do get to explore.
hmm I will say one thing which I sometimes have as a takeaway for when I'm looking at world buildings for books, which is, would I want to run an RPG one set in this world, and do I think I could, based off the information I've been given in the book? And I feel like absolutely. I There's such a
I
detailed
could run.
tapestry of the world, and I'm so interested in like different parts of it. And sometimes
Yeah.
you read a book and you're just like, oh, this is interesting. The story was good, but the world only feels fleshed out in the parts that the story touched. This isn't the case. This feels like a full world that happened to have a story in part of it, um, which I
Yeah,
adore, but I understand isn't everyone's priority.
I could, especially with like there being a prequel,
hmm
I could run something in this world. This world is well enough done. I could absolutely run a Prior of the Orange Tree like campaign.
hmm
Honestly, the Roots of Chaos. That's the series name. The Roots of Chaos. I had to look that up.
Okay.
I could absolutely run a Roots of Chaos like campaign.
hmm
Especially because the prequel, I'm pretty sure gets more into like a bunch of like it's like 50 years or
Is it?
something before it or
Oh,
something.
interesting. I assumed it was going to be the case of the original ancestors just
It
being
might be. I'm
vague.
not actually sure. I just know it came out really recently. It came out like a year or two ago.
I'll have to keep an eye out
With
for it.
the yeah, and the Prior of the Orange Tree is 2019. I'm pretty sure. So
Mhm.
it's quite a while after. It's like 4 years after the Priory. And like I said, I never read Priory. I had it on a TBR somewhere. Never read it. So I never looked into A Day of Fallen Night. I just saw like, prequel to a Priory, the book I still need to read someday. Honestly, the
Yeah,
book I still need to read someday because I didn't finish it.
that's fair. I will say it's not. Hmm. There are times I think where I felt like the motivation to kind of, how do I phrase this? The There wasn't very much urgency is the wrong word, but sense of consequences in certain parts of the book where I was very interested in learning more about the characters, but I felt like I was learning more about the characters in almost standstill whilst problems happened around them but didn't change. For a middle part of the book, I don't actually know where it is that you stopped reading, which I suppose we should discuss in the spoiler section. But yeah, I
Yeah,
enjoy it.
that's the spoiler section.
I'm going
I
to
feel like that's the spoiler.
reread it. There was actually a few quotes which I took down from the book, which I just thought were lines that I really liked. But again, that's for the spoiler section. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I like the book. I do want to finish it. That is that I'm going to finish it. Um, I just need to be in the right thing for an 800-page book that is not that fast in the center and then really speeds up at the end.
yeah, that's fair. Shall we pop over to the other book then for our next review? I always feel a bit silly doing
Yeah.
a spoiler-free review for oh,
Ooh,
one
I saw
second.
one of the nominations and I'm excited about it.
I've managed to forget to change the title. So one second, let me just I forgot to change the name of the book on the second tab, so I was
Yeah.
saying the previous one. But that's okay. Barbarians at the Gate. What are your thoughts on it? And I'll get it up on the screen again soon.
Okay, so Barbarians at the Gate. It's an interesting. I agree with you that it's always weird or kind of like hard in a way to
Mhm.
talk in a non-spoiler way about a non-fiction book
Yeah,
because like it's always a weird thing.
there we go.
Um,
No scuff.
okay, so I like
Oh, hi,
for
Amy.
this I recently saw something that I really like for talking about in a non-spoiler way non-fiction books is I like to look at what the intention is of the book, what the objective is, and then talk about it in how it nails what the intention of the book is. For example, stuff like Light Eaters last time. We had a hard time talking about it because it didn't go like full in-depth like detail and stuff.
Yeah.
That was not the intention of the book. And I think in the intention of the book, it kills it. I think this does something very, very similar in that the intentions and the objective of this book is like trying to shed light on corporate finance and stuff, right?
Mhm.
And to like kind of get you into an understanding, to get you into that world. And in that, I think it succeeds very well. I really enjoyed this book. The like talk about the tracking of money, legal maneuverings around
Mhm.
the like relationships between people, like personal relationships between people, and how that affects business and where all of this. It really, really succeeded. Um, and interestingly enough for me, is like I would wonder how this would work in a fantasy setting or something. But this is a book with a ton of main characters in a kind of
Yeah.
way. And I kind of like it. I kind of like the showing of like what's the word? Like the cast to a degree. It's hard to say cast because it's real people, but that
Mhm.
idea of like the people behind these things that one we don't see, two we do not understand, and how this brings it to um almost to light, and like brings you to the space that they are in throughout all of this.
Yeah, I thought.
Um,
I,
yeah, go for it. What's up?
I was gonna say I really liked how it didn't introduce the characters when the like events relevant to the deal, which for context of Barbarians at the Gate, this is about the leveraged buyout of JRJ Nabisco, which is a
Yeah.
big tobacco and foods company in America, and for many years was the largest leveraged buyout to happen. And so it covers the relationships and the dealings and motivations of all the characters for the different parties who were um, in competition for and ended up succeeding in the leverage buyout of JRJ Nabisco, which it's a strange one to like talk about with spoilers about the conclusion of the book because it's history. So
Yeah.
I can't imagine people know as trivia who won the buyout, but I feel like I should still dance around it. But yeah, also a book with many characters. We had so many characters this month.
We did. This is a really like character-driven month,
Mhm.
which I didn't expect this to be, because like when you look at like the idea of this book, and exactly what Daniel just said, where it's like the talk about RJR and Bisco and like the deal and the your first mind would go to like, okay, it's just a business deal. It's just finances and a business deal. And you don't get the idea of how interpersonal this relates to people, and how these people are actual like almost in quotation marks characters in this that like push this forward, and
Yeah.
how it affects the deal, and like where some of the stuff goes, and like who is playing golf with who and why that matters and what's
Mhm.
going on here, and like and that person gets pissed because we didn't. It's like crazy. It's like
And this person
it's
works with
great.
this
I
lawyer because they
loved
go to
it.
the same country club. Yep. I
I
will
loved
say
it.
it was very interesting. It was like a kind of look into another world. Did make me have less faith in the people doing these deals. The fact they're
Yes.
deciding
It
it based off who goes to which country club, which maybe I shouldn't be surprised of, but to see it be such a universal thing across all the characters in the story did make me go,
it did make me concerned
I'd
about
like
the
another
people that are
accountant in this
controlling.
room, please.
Yeah, it makes me concerned about the people that controls a lot of this world. Uh but
Yeah.
I loved the like the intricacies and like the way they put you into this world. Because
Okay,
like
Ben
I said,
Grey. Oh, enjoy the
with
tea. Enjoy
how
the tea. Sorry.
enjoy your tea. I kinda want tea. Um
Bubble
with like
tea?
how
Mwahahaha.
no, I can't get that now. Place is closed, sadly, and I want some. Um, the way I like writing or talking about like nonfiction books recently is like, does it do the objective of the book? Not like, is it a very informative book? Because I still feel like you can have really good books that are not that informative, but like get you to a place where you can be informed about it. Something like Light Eaters, where Light
Mhm.
Eaters doesn't get like academic about what it's talking about, but it gets you to a space where you understand it enough to do that if you want, and to also get you on the same page that they want you on. I feel like this does that very well, where it's not like a academic study of how deals like this happen to a degree. This
Mhm.
is getting you into the space of how this deal happened and what the messiness is of these deals.
Yeah.
Because it is messy as heck. And it's so entertaining.
Mhm.
Which I didn't think I would have, but it's like I was never
I was more invested than I expected in this. Um,
same.
which I didn't. I'd heard good reviews of this book, but I didn't expect it to be a page turner. But I really was invested in finding out who managed to annoy who next and still earn $1 million or whatever madness happened page
Look,
to page.
it's crazy. Like the CEO just like it's insane because you can see some of these people as well in like life. and when you talk to people in business, but the CEO just like kicking the hornet's nest because he's a little bored and anxious that day. And it's like, dude,
Yeah.
what the fuck? It's like, I
It
love it.
it
It's
made
like,
me feel more employable. I think I'm just like, oh,
same.
maybe I am a people person after reading this book. But
Honestly, I feel like this book could be a really, really great like series, like something like Severance, or one of those like more
I'm honestly surprised
dramas.
this hasn't been dramatized yet, because I feel like there's enough going on for it to be a kind of,
It would be such a good series. I feel like
yeah.
I would love to watch this. This book was fantastic. When you suggested it last month, I did not think I would be as into this or as invested into this as I was. I could not stop
Oh, I'm
reading
glad
this
you liked
book.
it.
I could not stop reading this book.
Mhm.
It's like fantastic.
I will say I read this one a lot faster than I read The Priory of the Orange Tree, which is partially because the page difference. Because this is a shorter book, I think around 300 pages.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
this is a way shorter book.
but
It's like
yeah,
three something.
I didn't expect the book about leverage buyouts to be faster paced than the book about dragons, but here we are.
I didn't either. I didn't either.
Yeah.
I that was not my expectation this month either.
Mhm.
Also, it would not have been my expectation if at the start of this month you told me you're gonna only finish one of the two um, book club books, and it was not gonna be the fantasy one.
Yeah.
If you told
I
me
was
that, I
kind of
would have thought you
surprised
were
by that.
lying to me.
Yeah. No. Um. Talking about structure and narration, one thing which I will gripe on this book about is because a lot of the book is reconstructed directly from interviews and accounts, which
Yeah,
allows for a really good sort of reliability and accuracy as if you were a fly on the wall in these situations. It does regularly mean that characters are referred to by first name, surname, nickname, and just their
yeah,
title. And I found it sometimes quite difficult to track which character people were referring to, or which person, I
yeah,
suppose, since it's non-fiction, since it's real events. And I don't know if it's
yeah,
just from the printing version I have, but one of those instances where someone says like Paul and then they put brackets in McCartney afterwards to indicate which Paul they're saying, if that were to
yep.
be done with first name, surname, title throughout the book, that would improve it to me quite a bit. I think this might be my favorite of the
I
non-fiction
agree.
books we've read through book club, but
It is
that
my
that is
favorite
my
one.
that is my one gripe. The fact that by being true to the direct quotes, it sometimes was obtuse, keeping track of
Yeah,
all of the moving people. And there's a cast of, I would say, 30 or 40 people throughout the book that are
yeah,
all pretty important and do somewhat regularly come back into the story. And they all have
yeah. There's
similar kind of Northern European names, and that
yep.
it's all men, and so you can imagine that it gets confusing very quickly. um,
Yeah, there's like Dania said, there's more than one Paul,
yeah,
and they just say Paul sometimes, and you're like, which Paul?
especially because on occasion they all betray each other and swap teams, and I'm like, wait, so which Paul swapped team to which? And so I do wish
It's
there
like,
was a bit more done to identify the characters, maybe as a almost like the copy I have with the Priory of the Orange Tree, if there was an index of the characters at the end of the book that just had their full name, aliases they've gone by in the book, and when they worked out which company or on which deals.
yeah.
Um, if that was added to the book,
I
I
did hear
don't
there is
think
a
I'd have any
version.
criticisms of it. But oh, is there a version with that?
I heard there's a version with like a firm list at the front, with like name, nickname, surname,
Hmm.
idea of where. Um, I didn't get that version, so
Yeah.
I'm on your side. Where I'm like, I kind of
I'm
wanted
glad they
that
made that
because
version, and I kind of wish that's the one I got. But yeah,
same.
I will say, being the person that I am, I kind of wished there was a bit more of the details on the funding gathering. Um,
Yeah,
the one gripe which I have, which I don't know it's hard to say if it counts as a spoiler for non-fiction books, but one of the big points of contention in the buyout of JRJ Nabisco is based off what type of funding is going to be used for the buyout, if it's going to be done in kind of cash or if it's going to be done using junk bonds, which I knew through my context of having like an education in maths and through that partial like higher education in finance, I knew about junk bonds and their history before a book that's so well built up the characters. At no point did they ever explain what a junk bond was and why it was different to kind of traditional stock backing or investment backing or cash in hand. And so I wish the time to define that was added into the book, because there was certainly space since they kind of fleshed out characters' opinions and practice using junk bonds and alternative methods of funding. But I can imagine that would be confusing. So I would like watch a quick YouTube video on what junk bonds are before reading the book. But I would absolutely recommend reading it. I feel like next time I still semi-frequently tutor people in maths. It tends to just be the case of if one of my co-workers has a kid that's doing A-levels, especially if they're doing further maths, I'll agree to help. And something which people often ask is, oh, I want to read a book to write about on my CV. And if I know anyone who's like wanting to work in like finance, I'm telling them to put this book on there just because I think they should read it, just because I think it's interesting. I know it's not sort of the like directly academic detail breakdown, but I just think it's interesting. I don't know.
I agree.
I think it's fun. I think it's good.
This is my favorite non-fiction book that we've done so far.
Yeah, if I were to rank, I would feel mean doing a full 12 ranking. But at the end of the year, do you want to write up our top 5 books for each category?
I'm down. I can do a full 12 ranking.
No, I can't. I hate putting things in last place. I feel so evil.
I know. Neuromancer's last place for me right now.
Ooh.
And it's probably staying there. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not a big Neuromancer fan.
You didn't finish the book this month.
Yeah, and I still would put Neuromancer last.
And that's a testimony to the first chapter of the Priory of the Orange Tree.
That's how good the world building in Priory Orange Tree was. I'm still willing to not give it last.
No, I suppose that's fair. I think, yeah. I think this is my favorite non-fiction book of the month, of the year so far. Favorite fiction book, it's still between this and Babel, Priory and Babel for me this year, I think.
I think it might be Priory for me right now. Even though I didn't finish it, it's a really, really good book in a lot of stuff that I like. I just wasn't in the headspace to finish it, but I think it's a phenomenally written book.
I will say I am slightly grumpy that I yapped about this, but I had like cold and flu on and off for the last 2 months, and so I barely read anything for the first 2 weeks of this library's like book club period, and so I had to rush to finish Priory, and so maybe that contributes to my feeling of the ending of it being rushed. But I was grumpy when my ISP made me push the book club back a week. I read like 300 pages in a day to finish it, and then...
No. I remember you DM'd me on Discord about it, and you're like, I read 300 pages of this book in a day. What the hell?
And then Virgin Media betrayed me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so grumpy. But
that is messed up.
Talking about our ongoing excitement for books, should we get on to potentially the most exciting part, I think, but potentially is the voting for next month?
Yes. I am hecka.
So I don't think
I'm sad that mine didn't send.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with the form this month. I'm slightly cautious that I may have made a mistake setting it up.
We can check for this next month's one.
Yeah, I think I may do a test one for it. But anyway, these are the nominations for this month, which we can go through them quickly.
I'm so excited for one of these, and it's not even one that I suggested.
Well, one of the non-fiction books which you nominated, I'd actually also nominated myself. Great minds think alike.
Let's go.
One day we need to get someone who has like a different taste in books to us to
Yeah.
be one of the hosts, because we're both just like, I love
Yeah.
a good 800 pages of world building. And at
Yeah.
some point we need a sane person who wants to do things other than read and play video games, who wants to actually touch grass between reading books. But that won't
Yeah,
be
we need
today.
we need like a second or third opinion of like somebody that touches grass,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because we like reading 800-page books of world building and going like, yeah, that was a great book. I read it in 2 weeks.
Yep. The absolute madness of, I read The Fire of the Orange Tree in around 12 days, and I read it whilst also finishing another book and a half in that period, because I read multiple books at once, because I am a wild creature which no laws can contain. So
I think it took me 12 days to get through half of the priory.
yeah, I was kind of going pedal to the metal with reading it, because I knew I needed to finish it for the book club. But so yeah, I should probably start with the first book, which is the first one nominated is James Jade City by Fonda Lee, which I suppose fitting. We were kind of talking about Succession style TV shows. Jade City has instances of kind of Succession style maneuverings and interactions, but it's in a fantasy setting and based around a fantasy driven integrated economy in roughly based off a city akin to Hong Kong, historical Hong Kong. And so it's about all of the different. I forget what the term they use for the groups. I don't know if it's the triads that run the different cities and the different trading factions and their maneuvering, and it follows. It's syndicates because it's underground groups.
Yeah.
And it's jade is the material that powers magic in this world, and so it's talking about the kind of power movings of the different companies and groups that produce and refine the jade, and how that facilitates the flow of power and freedom within the different parts of the world. And so it's my understanding that it's a very kind of another quite character driven world politicsy book, not in the sense of actual world politics, but in the sense of people going to meetings and figuring out the intentions of people and those sort of shenanigans. Kind of very reminiscent to parts of the two books we had this month. But I've also heard good reviews for it, so one of my favourite booktubers gave it like a solid 4.5 stars, so I'm quite looking forward to reading this one at some point.
Yes. I will say I've read Jade City. I will say that positive mind. I love Jade
I should
City.
have let you to describe it then. I haven't read it. I was just going off spoiler-free reviews I've seen of it.
No, it's better that you do it, because I've read the whole series like 3 times, and I wouldn't know where to stop between the 3.
Oh, that can get confusing knowing what's in which book.
Yeah. Especially because I've reread it so many times, it's all one story to me. I really, really love Jade City. I really love the whole series.
I didn't think the series was finished. I thought the is it a trilogy or a 4-book series? I forgot the name of the 4-book series. It's not a quadrology. What is it?
4 books quadrology? Is it a quadrology?
I didn't think so, because you have duology, trilogy, and then name of series.
I don't. It's not a. So the series I don't think is fully
quartet. Done. I don't like it being a quartet. That's kind of a brass band thing. That they can't have that.
I don't like quartet. The Greenburn Saga is currently a trilogy, going to Jade Legacy as the last one. There is talks that it will go longer, but it has been a while since we got the last Greenburn book. Book 3 was in 2021. So we don't know
Oh,
if it is
okay.
expanding or when, but for now it is a trilogy.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I've realised because of the order that I've put these in, it's a little bit awkward because I've just put the ones that you nominated one after the other.
Yeah, and, because of the mess up, there's nothing about any of these in the blurb thing, so I have to do them. But I'm
Yeah,
down.
sorry about that.
I'm really excited
But
for all three of these books.
oh, okay. I'm very excited for Legendborn, but I don't know too much about the others.
I'm also really excited for Legendborn. Okay, so let's start with The Wandering Inn. So take everything we talked about for Prior of the Orange Tree this month and throw it out the window. The Wandering Inn is one of the longest series currently being published. It has 16 books and currently still publishing. Um, it is long, but it is fantastic. Um, the basic idea of what it is it's a fantasy inn that moves from place to place. Um, it's just like you go from area to area and you're exploring a fantasy world, essentially. But it is very legends and lattes and that like cozy slice of life fantasy in a very high fantasy world. Um,
That sounds
it
interesting.
is like isekai. So the main
Oh,
character
okay.
comes from, yeah, it's like an isekai kind of. It's like a weird isekai exploration cozy fantasy.
Mhm.
Um, the reason I haven't read The Wandering Inn, I've wanted to get into it. The reason I actually nominated this month is because the main voice for the book, for the audiobooks for this, currently stepped down from the project. They retired from the project. So everybody's kind of doing a like reread thing of The Wandering Inn and a re-listen to all of the stuff she did for this. And I think I've heard a ton of really good things, including from people that I highly value in like the book talk world and like writers themselves.
Okay.
And it is kind of similar to what we read for the Prior of the Orange Tree, with a few caveats. It is way less action. There is no big like end thing at the end, and it is 16 books. Uh,
I was about to
other than
say,
that, it's very
I,
similar.
I appreciate Drem and Silver Linings and the kind of shock at 16 books because that is a substantial series to get into. Is it cozy fantasy from the books you referenced when describing it? Because I know
It
you
is
compared it to
kind of
Legends
cozy
and Lattes.
fantasy. It's not fully cozy fantasy. There is a bit of like danger in the world, and there is a bit of stuff like, so for example, it's not even a spoiler. When Eren gets transported to the world, the main character gets transported to the world, she almost gets eaten by a dragon. So there
Okay.
is a little bit of like action and a bit of
Yeah.
stakes and a bit of drama and a bit of, it is also exploring the world and exploring places of a little bit of drama, places where there's like evil goblins, there's a battle, or like
Mhm.
deadly rock crabs, or like the necromancer in the crypts or stuff, right?
Yeah. So there's
Um,
more stakes than
she,
there would be for cozy fantasy normally.
yeah, it's a bit more bigger stakes and a bit more high magic fantasy than
Okay.
cozy fantasy usually is. So I would say it's like between like a fantasy book and cozy fantasy. It falls right in between. It's a good intro into cozy fantasy.
Okay. That makes sense. And
If you want to read 16 books.
I don't think I want to read 16 books, but that's also because my to be read list is already at least 30. And I restarted
Yeah,
it at the start of the year.
it is quite long.
So,
And my to be read list is also getting longer.
is it a book that can be read in isolation, or does it kind of
It
lead
is an
into the series?
isolation book.
Okay,
No,
that's good.
so because of how it is structured,
Mhm.
so the way it works is the wandering in kind of goes from area to area in this world, and I think into other worlds later on in the series as well. But it's like very exploratory of where it is. So it doesn't kind of like move it, there's no like there's politics in this other side of the world. It's more like, this is where we are, this is what we're exploring. The next book we go to, next region, and we explore that region. The next one we're gonna look and talk about those people. So it almost feels like a RPG, like setting guide, where you're in an area and you like learn about the area and the
I
people
feel kind of
and like
silly,
the
but kind
hungry.
of episodic in the way the Doctor Who episodes used to be.
It really is almost like that. That is kind of what it plays out like.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's kind of cool. I'm kind of curious and interested in it. I've heard a lot of really good things about The Wandering Inn.
Oh, hey, Jenny.
Uh, just to give you perspective, by the way, on how fast this book gets published, how fast the series gets published. The Wandering Inn, the first one, was published in 2018. Book 16 is coming out
How many
in a
pages are
month or
they? Are
two.
they like 200, 300 pages per book, or?
The Wandering Inn page count. I want to see the page count for all of the books.
I'm slightly terrified if it's averaging more than 400 pages. Even if it's like quite light writing at that pace, that's crazy.
Chapter list. So how many chapters are there in the first?
Do you have any books with psychopathic serial killers as the protagonist?
That's a lot.
I don't. I'm trying to think. I tend not to read books that are kind of horror aligned, and so I tend not to often read books where the main character is kind of psychopathic serial killer territory. I'm trying to think of books that I've heard as having good recommendations that might fall into that.
I don't know any. I'm trying to think of some too.
Wait, there's one that I can think of, but I'm gonna have to find the video which I saw it in to get the reference. It was a kind of comedy horror romance novel about two assassins that fall in love after getting into competition for the same prey, which maybe fits some of the criteria. I can't say it's my area of expertise. I like books with flawed main characters, but the flaw normally is in being a serial killer, at least so far. What did you say?
Maybe we don't read The Wandering Inn this month.
How many pages is it?
1,235.
Okay. If it gets voted for, I'll read it, but I don't know if I'm voting for that. That's
I didn't realize that so many. I didn't realize that's that many pages. That's the estimated length of the ebook version. How many page swipes you do, and the settings are used closely to a physical book. So it's like close to 1,000.
Oh, is it a digital only book?
Yes, it's digital
Okay.
only.
Spy Family? It isn't. I'll have to. It was from one of the Newly Nova monthly recap videos, so I'll have to go back in my search history to find it. But I can send you the link to the book on Discord afterwards if that would be good. Silver Lining. I'm sorry I didn't have one to hand. Maybe. I don't think I need to read more books about serial killers. That sounds scary. Maybe. I read a book about like bankers this month. That's close enough. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm
Okay.
trying to think if I have any that I have read.
I can think of books that have protagonists that you don't root for, but it's often the case the protagonists that are interesting to follow whilst being that are antagonists tend to have very strong emotions to justify their perspective and keep it moving. Honestly, my brain's just going Death Note.
I'm also getting Death Note.
Which I love Death Note, partially because it was one of the first manga I ever read, so I'm very fond of it. But Every time
The
I
the
go out just wearing like a fun little gothic outfit and someone asks me if I'm cosplaying Misa Amani, I'm half horrified, half proud of myself. And it happens every single time. It's always that, oh, Wednesday Adams. It's just something I've accepted.
Wednesday. The only ones I can think of that if you haven't read them, you might like them, is Death Note,
Mhm.
which that kind of works. Um, you might have seen the movie, but the book is different, and I think the book is better. But the book for American Psycho is also really good, and
I
also has
haven't
with
read the book
Patrick
of it.
Bateman that like it's really good.
Okay.
Um, Patrick Bateman also being that like kind of he's kind of the like main character like
Mhm.
protagonist, but he's not really somebody you root for. And then in that same vein, you could read You, the book for You, by Caroline Kepnes, which it does have the Netflix adaptation. The Netflix adaptation is bad compared to the first book in the series. The first book is really good. And then a book that I have on my list, but I just have never had the drive to read, that
Mhm.
I've heard is pretty good, is Wasp Factory by Ian Banks.
Oh, I've heard
But
good
those are the
things about that
only
book.
four. Yeah, those are the only four I can think of. I don't really read books in that idea. But
Yeah.
yeah, Wasp Factory, American Psycho, You, or Death Note. Of those, I would read Death Note. Death Note's just fun.
I love Death Note, yeah. Oh wait, should we hop onto The Chalice of Gods by Rick Riordan?
Yes, because we're the Wandering in okay. The Chalice of the Gods. Basically what the Chalice of the Gods is you know Percy Jackson, right?
Oh
Everybody knows
wait,
Percy Jackson.
yeah.
This is the new series that he started with Percy Jackson recently.
Oh, I,
Um
I was a bit confused when I was looking at this one because I was like, is this not the first book of the Percy Jackson series? I don't think it is. And then I tried not to
no.
read any further because I was scared of spoilers because I still haven't finished the series yet.
Yeah, so Percy Jackson, there's a few trilogies in Percy Jackson. There's the original set, which is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which actually becomes more than 3 books. It becomes 5 books.
Mhm.
For Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is the first series he did with Percy Jackson. Then he did the Heroes of Olympus, which is they go to another camp. Then this is the third series that he's doing with Percy, which is the senior year adventures. So this is following older Percy Jackson, now past all of the things that he did. He recently started this, and there's 2 books in the series so far.
Would,
Um,
would you say you need to, how do I phrase it? I assume there's spoilers for the first series of Percy Jackson in here?
there is a few spoilers, but nothing that big from what I've seen. I've not seen
Okay.
spoilers about this yet,
Mhm.
myself, because I don't want to spoil myself for this book because I really love Percy Jackson.
That's fair.
Um, there's an interesting thing about like, um, it kind of is a reinvigoration of Percy Jackson. So the main idea of this is he goes back to high school, right? He
Okay.
goes back to New York and kind of wants to have a normal life, but the gods are like, nope, not done with you yet.
You got more
Um,
tasks to do.
there's more quests for you, baby, and he has to go to like university, um, New Rome University, I think, and fulfill like more quests and do more things. Um,
Oh.
and then he'll get like a recommendation from Mount Olympus and like stuff like this, and it's just a reinvigoration of the Percy Jackson that wasn't like the big stakes like prophecy everything. It's more just like a Percy's a cool dude and he's doing quests again with the gods type vibe.
Mhm. Okay.
So
I haven't finished the original Percy Jackson series, which makes me ever so slightly wary of reading it, but it does also remind me that I need to finish the original Percy Jackson series, and so is good in that sense.
from what I have read, is this is a very new reader friendly Percy Jackson book as well.
Mhm.
Too, where it's like readers that are new to Percy Jackson or readers that have been awaiting for this for close to a decade now. Both would really like this book.
Mhm. One
So
book which is similar in a similar vein to this, I was very tempted to nominate was the new book in the Hunger Games world that's came out by Suzanne Collins.
Sunrise of the Reaping.
Yeah, I was very tempted to nominate it because
I
I
was so close to
want to
nominating it
read
too.
it but haven't read it yet. But I wasn't sure, even if it is like a standalone book, where it would fall in the realm of.
That one
It doesn't
is
spoil
it's a
anything, but I feel like you
no.
get most out of it having read the other Hunger Games books first.
Yes. There's a lot of characters that cameo in that thing where a lot of their cameo is based on like, wait, I know who this person is.
I had someone who I was following on Twitter who said reading Sunrise on the Reaping felt like when Marvel movie crossovers were good. Um,
It does.
but with like crippling sadness towards the end because it's a Suzanne
Yeah.
Collins book. But
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that sounds quite interesting then.
Hey.
So
Yeah,
for
so this is a
sorry, I realized I got distracted. So is it in the same
no.
kind of level of content? So the original Percy Jackson series are kind of a young teen fantasy.
So this goes to it's like young adult, a bit older than like middle grade. So the last set
Mhm,
wasn't young adult, it was middle grade fiction. This is starting to move more into like young adult fantasy and stuff. Um kind of how the series has been progressing. Stuff like Magnus Chase or the latest series with Heroes of Olympus both became a little bit more real.
yeah.
Um so this is just kind of progressing that. Um, and as well, Percy Jackson has never been like middle school reading or like
Mhm,
young adult. It's been like air of like that like 19-year-old vibe. And this is his senior year, so he is closer to like being an adult now. So it is reading a lot more upper young adults
okay.
from what I've seen.
Um.
But again, nothing like it is Rick Riordan, so no like heavy swearing or like blood, death, murder. It's
Yeah.
more just like, yeah.
Um.
Also, we are getting Grover and Annabeth back. Just for those that do like Percy Jackson, Grover and Annabeth are a big part of this again. Where they weren't fully in Heroes of Olympus to a large degree. They were in the story, but they weren't main characters. This is going back to the trio and like that old school Percy Jackson vibe for anybody that has read old school Percy Jackson.
Okay. I feel bad because I really have just put all of the books that were nominated by you in a pile. But would you like to go through
Yeah,
Legendborn by Tracy Dean? I'm very excited for this one.
Legendborn. I am too. So I didn't know about Legendborn until the third book got published like a week or two ago, and I was like, "What is this?" And then read about the series, and now I really want to read the series. Uh, Legendborn is about a 16-year-old person, a 16-year-old girl called Brie Matthews, whose mom dies in a car accident, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Okay." Goes on about life, goes to like a high schooler at like a kind of live in high school area, and then a magical attack happens on her first night of like campus. Magic stuff goes down and she's like, what the heck? And then she finds out about this secret society called Legendborn, who are like mages. They
I
try
do
and
love a
wipe her
good
mind,
hidden
like,
magic world series.
yeah, it's like fully, it's like an urban fantasy hidden magic world vibe, which I
Ooh.
really like.
When you get good
Yeah,
urban fantasy, it's rare and good.
yeah, that's why I was getting excited about this. So they try and wipe her mind. It doesn't work. And so she's like, what the heck? And she discovers her own unique magic that she has. That's kind of spoiler stuff happens. Um, Also, it is tied to the night her mom dies.
Oh,
Um, so
ominous.
she goes, I need to know more about this. So she's trying to infiltrate the Legendborn society, and with a friend called Nick, who is also a Legendborn, she's trying to find out more about what's going on, her own powers, and how this is all tied to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and a magical war and things.
Ooh.
Um, yeah. So it's like urban fantasy with like Arthurian legend tied in, secret society, cool magic powers. It's like the vibe is kind of like Harry Pottery with like a bunch of like Arthurian legend and like stuff like that. Seems really fun. Um, Also, it's not that heavy or long. I think it's like the first book in the series is like 400, 500 pages, so it's pretty chill. And it's young adult fantasy, so it's like nothing all that intense or anything. Just fun character work. I've also heard really good things about this series. I've heard this is a series that gets better as it goes. Like book 2, book 3 are really good apparently.
Mhm. Yeah. I've heard very good things about this series as a whole, and so I would quite like to read all of them. I hadn't realised that the third one was already out. I thought it was just the first two currently. But
Yeah, that's book 3 came out 5th of March, I think. 6th of March. So it's like a month or so ago. A bit more than a month ago. And that's where I picked it up. I saw it released and I was like, "Ooh, what's this?" And then I got into the Legendborn. I'm like,
yeah. Um
I really want to read it. It seems really good.
oh, that makes sense. I think this is one where I may want to go away and read it next month if I have time if it doesn't get picked.
Yeah.
On to one of the next ones that was nominated is Gideon the Ninth by Tasman Muir. This is a book that I've heard a lot of good things about. It is, from my understanding, not the easiest read in terms of some of the contents.
No.
So because there's some pretty upsetting scenes in the book and also mature content in it, I'm just gonna like quickly go through the content warnings now. When we select the books, I'll check and reference and post any content warnings that are relevant for them. But just because it is a pretty big part of Gideon the Ninth, it includes reference to or mention of like death and abuse of children, murder, suicide, genocide, child sacrifice, body horror, cannibalism, and necromancy are large, with that being the main theme of the book. And there's also some quite serious mental health and self-harm issues depicted within the book, alongside the abuse that led to that, and PTSD, I believe. There's also sexual content in the book as well, which is under a different category, but
There's
yeah.
also a little bit of gore.
Yes. Yeah, written gore and body horror.
Yeah.
So very good book from all the reviews I've heard, but always worth taking care of yourself and being mindful, depending on what you are up to reading. But kind of fitting for the grim settings of the book, Gideon the Ninth follows a necromancer who I'm just reading the Goodreads because I haven't read this book, and the little description submission was quite short. But it follows the character Gideon. Gideon has a sword, some dirty magazines, and no more time for this undead nonsense. Boarded by unfriendly, aspiring nuns, ancient retainers, and countless skeletons, Gideon is ready to abandon a life of servitude and an afterlife as a reanimated corpse. She packs up her sword, her shoes, and her dirty magazines, and prepares to launch her daring escape. But a childhood nemesis won't set her free without a service. And so I don't know too much else about the book, but it has a lot of very good reviews. I don't know if you've read this one, Kai. But...
Yes, I have read. I have read all of this. The Locked Tomb, which this is from.
Oh yeah, is there
Which
3 or
is
4 of
book
them? I
1.
think.
Yeah, there's 4 books. Well, there's a 4th one coming.
Mhm.
Um, there's more than there's 3 books, but there's more. There's like a 3.5, 2.5, 1.5,
Okay.
and like a 0.5 out. So there's technically like 5 books in the series, but there's 3 in the mainline series. Gideon the Ninth is fantastic. Uh, it is really good. Um, fun, interesting things just to sprinkle in. It is an LGBT story.
Yeah.
Gideon is LGBT as the main character. Um, there's a lot of really cool stuff in this.
I'm just gonna
In Gideon the
interject
Ninth.
really quickly. So, Leo, thank you so much for subscribing for 19 months. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed every book you get out the library this month. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
But
Yeah. It is a very fun. It is a very interesting like mashup of, as weird as it sounds, it's a mashup of horror, comedy, mystery, and dystopian. It's like a healthy sprinkling of like some romance and fun LGBT themes and stuff. Um, it is really well done and well written as well. I really, really enjoyed it.
yeah.
Um,
It's been on my to be read list for a while, but it's a type of book where I saw the content warnings for it and was a little bit scared, and so I've just been kind of like waiting for a good time to read it. But
yeah, the content words are a bit scary for this book. And it is adult fantasy, so they do get into some of the content warnings quite a lot.
mhm.
Um, I will say a lot of the like stuff that you've read about like body horror, gore, and stuff like that is a lot because they are necromancers. That's
Yeah.
the main power system. So that will be something that is dealt with. But a few things: really intriguing setting, really sharp and cool characters, and the magic system is really interesting. So if you like fantasy stuff like that, I would suggest you read this. It is really good. Um, and the characters in this is really well done. I really like Gideon specifically, the main character in this book. I really enjoy Gideon. I also really enjoy the character that the friend that she has to do a duty with is a character called Harrow Hark, who is also a really fascinating character in her own right. Um,
Okay. Lots of
really
good
good series.
character based books this month, by the sound
Yeah.
of it. So that's last on. How time flies! It's running away from me. It's stealing my bookmarks. Um, it is crazy to think I've been streaming for 20 months already. That's so much time.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy.
Oh, hi, Sounds. Oh,
Almost 2 years.
oh, it's gonna be 2 years in September, I think. I'll have to
Yeah.
do something cool. Oh, at least attempt to. Oh wait. Oh,
But yeah,
nice. Congratulations on the Huntress shenanigans, Jake. Good hatchet.
nice
Here is
job.
I knowing things about DPD. But yeah.
Nice hatchet. But yeah, I really really enjoy Gideon the Ninth. I think it's a really good book. That if you like fantasy, you really like these like LGBT stories, especially seeing where a lot of the representation in LGBT stories comes from, that we are getting now a lot more of. This was one of the big first ones. This was published in 2019. So this is before the
Okay.
like big push of all these LGBT stories that we are getting. That's fantastic.
Mhm. A
Gideon the
lot of
Ninth kind of
the.
paved the way for it.
It's before the kind of lockdown queer fantasy boom. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's also before the whole like romanticy section that just blew up a lot of like more
Whatever's going on TikTok.
yeah. So this is a very good story for like kind of a like precursor to LGBT stories in this. It's not the first, it is one of the big ones in it. Also a really good book,
I think
I will say.
the next book is a bit of a contrast, which is a psalm for the Wild Built, which I haven't read, but I believe it is a cozy science fiction fantasy book. I'm going to read through the little description for it, which is: centuries before robots of Panga gained self-awareness and laid down their tools, wandered en masse into the wilderness, never to be seen again. They faded into myth and urban legend. Now the life of the tea monk who tells the story is upended by the arrival of a robot, there to honour their old promise of checking in. The robot cannot go back until the question of what do people need is answered, but the question is but the answer to that question depends on who you ask and how. They all need to ask a lot. The Chamber series asks, in a world where people have what they want, does having more matter? And it's my understanding it's a very kind of feel-good, sort of gentle, cozy fantasy book that is. It addresses some like underlying serious themes, but in a very kind of kind way that makes you feel optimistic when you finish reading it. At least from the reviews that I have heard. I don't know if you've read this one, being a bit of a
No,
cozy fantasy aficionado. No, interesting.
I have not. Yeah, I've only recently got into cozy fantasy. This is something that has been on my list. Specifically, Becky Chambers, the author for this,
Yeah,
has been on my list.
I've
She
heard of.
does a series called Wayfarers as well.
Yeah,
That
I was
I've
gonna say I've heard of the
started reading.
Wayfarer series by her as well.
Yeah, I started I think I started reading Wayfarers #1. A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I've read that.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is an excellent
which
title of a book, just as a story.
it's a great title for a book. Um, so I don't actually know anything about A Song for Built at all. Um, or much about her specifically, other than like what I've read the start of in Wayfarers 1.
Mhm.
I will say this book seems very fun. I did check it out a bit when I started getting into Becky Chambers, but yeah, this seems really interesting. I'm kind of curious.
Okay. I don't believe there's any content warnings for this one. Again, whichever books get selected, I'll go through and double check and post any with the announcement thingamabob. But
Yeah,
up next is Blood Over Brighthaven, which is
ML Wang book.
yeah. This does also have some pretty heavy content warnings on it, from my understanding. I've not read it, but I believe
Yes.
there's mentions of gore, in-text sexual assault, and suicidal ideation in the book.
Yes.
They're the ones who are like flagged up on the reviews I've seen. But yeah, with that in mind, jumping into the description of it, an orphan since the age of 4, Sayara has always had more to prove than her fellow students. For 20 years, she has devoted every waking moment to the study of magic, fueled by a mad desire to achieve the impossible, to be the first woman ever admitted to the High Magistry. When she finally claws her way up the ranks to become a High Mage, however, she finds that her challenges have just begun. Her new colleagues will stop at nothing to let her know she is unwelcome, beginning with her giving her a janitor instead of a qualified lab assistant. So this is a book which I nominated, based on a good review, also based off the fact that I was craving reading a kind of academia training arc fantasy book. Sometimes you want to read a dark academia fantasy book, and I am guilty of that perpetually. Um, and so I
Oh,
was.
the person that loved Babel wants to read more dark academia.
This
Oh.
started long before Babel. We can trace this back at
It
least a
did.
decade, if
It
not
did
two.
start.
This
It
is
did
a.
start way before Babel.
Um, but yeah, uh, I've heard good things about the character interaction between the main character Sayana and the janitor as the story
Yeah,
progresses. Um, uh, I don't know if you've read this from your
I have.
response.
I love Blood Over Brighthaven. It's
Oh,
really well
I've
done.
picked a good book to recommend then. Okay, nice.
This is my when we talked about um Babel, I
Mhm.
said there's a few books in like dark academia and like a few books that I like more in that world and idea. Blood Over Brighthaven is one of them. Um
Mm.
I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of like a few series that come to mind and stuff that I've seen compared to this, just to give everybody kind of an idea of the vibes, is if you like stuff like her other works, so like the sort of Kaigen, if you've read that, um, is another work that's done in this kind of style. But stuff like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood has themes through this. I feel like stuff, if you like authors like Lee Bardugo, V.E. Schwab, stuff like that, you would really like this book. It is a lot in that idea and vibe and that feeling. It is really good. It is fantastic. I like this more than Babel. A lot more than Babel.
Oh.
But it is a quite blunt book. It is a political book. There is themes of politics and stuff in this. In the idea that she is one of the first females in this industry, so she gets bullied, she gets like ridiculed, mocked, and things. So it is a very blunt, almost like sexist book in how they treat the main character. I'm not going to spoil anything about the book. I will just say, if you are sensitive to that, this book does do that. It is very blunt on that. It is really good, though.
Mhm. Okay.
But yeah, if you have any interest in like talking about, if you have any interest in books that get into like the how it is for women to get into industries, because this is something that happened in real life as well, is the first women into any industries often get ridiculed and mocked and like pushed out like that. uh this does address that and how competent she is in that, and has really good interactions with the janitor,
Mhm. Yeah.
whose name I'm not going to say.
Um, I think should I hop over to Nettle and Bone then?
Yes.
Which, uh, oh, one thing that I mentioned specifically is the contents of the book. It does contain descriptions of um spousal abuse, horror elements, and then also description of miscarriage as specific topics for. So bear that
Yes.
in mind. I'm going to read through the blurb on this one. Which this is a fantasy horror book, so slightly spookier. After years of seeing her sister suffer at the hands of an abusive Prince Mara, the shy convert third-born daughter has finally realized that no one's coming to their rescue, no one except for Mara herself. Seeking help from the powerful Grave Witch, Mara is offered the tools to kill a prince, if she can only complete 3 impossible tasks. But as is in the way of tales of princes, witches, and the daughters, the impossible is only the beginning. On her quest, Mara is joined by the Grave Witch, a reluctant fairy godmother, and a strapping knight, as well as a chicken possessed by a demon. Together, the 5 of them intend to be the hand that closes around the throat of the prince and frees Mara's family and the kingdom from its tyrannous rulers at last.
Yee.
Which I have heard this book get some pretty positive reviews. I was a little bit surprised when I saw kind of the some of the quite harsh themes of things like spousal abuse and miscarriage, the part of the story, and then something like a fairy godmother and a possessed chicken that goes through the plot as feeling kind of
Yup.
from different worlds. And so I was a bit nervous about this book until I saw how many good reviews there are, because that feels like 2 very tonally disparate books. And so I haven't read this one myself, but I'm quite interested to see how the author marries those different kind of expectations together. Because
Same.
the last description, a quest with a necromancer, a fairy godmother, and what was the exact one? A chicken possessed by a demon. That sounds like the start to like a little cozy fantasy romp. That sounds like a comedy set. Um,
It kind
and
of does. It feels like very. It feels very like fairy tale
yeah,
of like yeah. It feels like Shrek. Like yes, the giant cookie talking donkey and like Shrek sets off. That's what
mhm,
it reads like. But then it's a horror book with
yeah,
like spousal abuse and things.
yeah. Which
I
have
I'm
you read
really
this one?
curious about it. No, I've not. It's been on my TBR.
Mhm,
I know
mhm.
about Nettle and Bone. I never read it.
Um,
It is. The only thing I think I checked my TBR quickly to see about it when I saw it on this list, and the only thing I wrote is interesting.
That's
So yeah, I also didn't know what to make of it.
yeah. I think my limited understanding of it, because I watched a few spoiler-free reviews of it, so I'd be able to yap about it, is that it does a lot of um irreverent kind of recontextualizing of classic fairy tale elements with things like
I love that.
the good fairy godmother, or groups like goblins, or the notion of like evil, scary necromancers, which I'm always a big fan of. I'm always a big fan of using intentional reframing of existing media elements that you have assumed connotations and biases, both positive and negative, towards, and using that to frame change in the story. And so that's quite interesting to me. But yeah.
I agree. I really find it interesting. I've seen a lot of people compare it to fairy tales,
Mhm.
in like that it's kind of weird. Like it's a dark slanted. It's almost like the Grimm's brothers fairy tales to a degree, where there's that like little aspect of horror attached to these like fairy tale ideas that we have. Like fairies being like a tooth fairy that like is really like kind of gross if you really think about it. I've heard a lot of that attached to it, or like grand godmothers, fairy godmothers putting curses on people, almost like a hag. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
that
think
sounds cool. That sounds interesting.
it's kind of a more fae than fairy um,
Yeah, it's like
spirited.
fairy tales.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I'm always a big fan of. There's so much cool. I know mostly about the Irish fae mythology, but yeah. Um, the last one for the fantasy section is one which I suspect
Finally!
Kaya's quite
Finally!
excited to talk about. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Do you want to take this one away?
It's finally here. It's the Song of Achilles. Daniel needs to read this book. All of you actually need to read this book. So, the Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller is it's it's historical fiction. It's more fiction and fantasy than history because it's a retelling of Achilles and a lot of the legends around Achilles. Including stuff like if you know something like about it with like his parents, who is the sea god Thetis and the legendary king Palus. Um, or like stuff like Patroclus and stuff like that. It is really well done. It is like substantially well done. Um, if you've ever seen anything about like the new boom in historical fiction, specifically, um,
A
what's the
lot
word?
of
Greek
the
mythology retellings.
retellings of classic tales has come from this book, is my understanding.
They're all specifically because of how well done this book is and how great this is. She has a few more. The one everybody probably heard of from this is not the Song of Achilles, it's Circe, which is even better than the Song of Achilles. But I think you need to start with the Song of Achilles to see where it comes from. It is fantastic. It's like it's got all the themes of like what you find in Greek mythology, but with like a heavy helping of fantasy thrown in, and a lot of like stories that are kind of made up but kind of fit in the world. And it doesn't shy away from anything, including how extremely LGBT friendly the Greeks were. If you know anything about the Greeks, notoriously very gay people. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
so it
one
is
thing
really good.
which I should have mentioned in terms of content warning for the book is with being based off the legends regarding Achilles, there is it's my understanding, quite a few mentions of sexual assault, but they all happen off
Yes,
screen, so to say. Um,
yes,
but it is contextually present if you're familiar with the kind of surrounding mythology. It is
yeah.
contextually
It
preserved
doesn't
in the
shy
same way,
away
but
from.
yeah, it's my understanding
Yeah,
that
it doesn't glorify him.
yeah, it's my understanding that like characters' consequences of dealing with it happens on screen, but the events themselves are
Yes,
all off screen and only referenced historically. Just in
yes.
terms of differentiating.
Nothing shown. Another point of that is it is a story about Achilles. There is war and some death and a
Yeah.
lot of like yeah. There's also a bunch of stuff like Helen of Sparta getting kidnapped
Mhm.
and like kind of that whole vibe of like stealing women from other kings and like there's a bunch of that stuff in the book. It is a pretty trigger warning book, but none of it is like over the top or not done to either actually tell the story of Achilles or enhance the story. None of it is gratuitous in that capacity. It is really good though. It's fantastic.
I mentioned
Then
to
you're
Kai
reading.
a while ago that I hadn't read this book, and I like heard Kai's microphone like max out from the like surprise noises that follows, um, which I
Yeah,
do need
because
to
you need
read
to
it.
read it. You need to read it. It's great.
Mhm. Yeah.
So good.
Okay.
This is when I said there's two books on here that I was really excited for like this month.
Mhm.
This was the top one. The other one was Jade City by Fondali because I think that's a
Ooh.
great book.
Okay. I'm gonna start making the poll now. If you could entertain people whilst I type very slowly. Um.
Yes. Uh, if anybody is curious about like, I do heavily suggest Cersei as well from Matt Miller. Um, it's a retelling of Cersei from Greek myth. Uh, it's really good. It's all very fun. It's like the big boom in historical fiction recently, ever since the Song of Achilles. But like it led into a book that I actually recommended for the other slot. Now that I think about it, because it's a more like accurate retelling, less than like
Oh,
fantasy retelling of
I
it.
think this is the one that I
For
also recommended.
yeah, Stephen Fry's one.
Yep.
Um, yeah, which is kind of the same as this, except that doesn't take like a fantasy aspect to this.
Yeah.
This is very like fantasy and fun and like some magic.
Mhm. As the
I
quick
have magic in
announcement, the
this.
first half of the poll is now live. Because of how scuffed Twitch polls are, we have to do it in two parts. And I am a emoji again, but I'm back now. And so the first half we'll be doing like a run-off. And so the top ones, if there's a tie, both of them, or if there's one winner, just that book, will be brought through to the final round. And then we'll
Oh,
do a second round where it's between a Psalm for the Wild Built, Blood over Brighthaven, Nettle and Bone, and the Song of Achilles. This first backer now is between Jade City, The Wandering Inn, The Chalice of the Gods, Legendborn, and Gideon the Ninth. Again, because of limitations of Twitch poll, I cannot write out the full book's title, so I'm just writing the first the book's title or as much of it as I can fit because it's insane character limit on the poll. But yes.
I'm really torn about this one.
Ooh.
What are you voting for, Danya? I know what I'm not voting for, and it's The Wandering Inn. Because I didn't
I
realize it's 1,200 pages.
I realised that I'm actually putting Legendborn in the second poll because I forgot to put it in this one, but I was planning to vote for Legendborn out of the first five and just accidentally made this first one a four-way poll. So I don't know. Out of the first five in
You
the
know,
list, if I hadn't done a dyslexia and missed one of them, it was going to be between Jade City and Legendborn. Um,
same.
and so I think that means Jade City. I am interested in the Chalice of the Gods as well.
That's my issue now. Is like now that I see challenge. If it was just
Oh,
Legendborn Jade City, I would have probably voted Legendborn. But now that the Chalice of the Gods is here and Legendborn isn't, now I kind of want to vote Chalice of the Gods. But I also really want people to read Jade City.
that's fair. I mean, I suppose that's the thing we can yap about whilst voting's happened. Did you go away and read any of the other books that were nominated last month but didn't get picked? Because I know we were talking about wanting to read a few of them. Um,
I don't remember which ones. So I'm not gonna lie to you. I tried to read. I got kind of stuck this month reading
mhm.
because of the Priory of the Orange Tree, and I really did want to finish it for book club. So I tried to read it a few times,
Yeah.
and I kind of got stuck on it. So this
Mhm.
one I actually didn't read that much. I only read essentially 1.5 books, even though that half of that book was essentially a book. But I only read those two because I reread Priory like twice,
Oh, that's
the
fair.
first 400 pages.
I
So I got
started
stuck with much. What
I
about you?
started reading the Stephen King memoir, kind of
Oh,
unsurprisingly from where we were last time, which
yeah.
I am reading it slowly in the hopes that there's the rule of like non-nominating books consecutively, otherwise I would have nominated it again for non-fiction. But next month when we meet in May, I'm gonna nominate it, and we'll see if it gets picked then. Because I'm just
Are you
reading it
gonna
slowly.
nominate it?
Yeah, are you gonna
Okay, then I
nominate
won't
it?
nominate it. I
So
want to
we're not
nominate
gonna
it
get
as
it.
well.
We've already done that once this month.
We
Okay.
did.
Oh, so for the first poll, the Chalice of the Gods wins, which that makes
Oh,
sense.
nice.
I'm excited for.
Also, thank you for not voting for The Wandering Inn. I didn't want to read a 1,200-page book.
I will say I feel a little bad, but I did sort of struggle to keep up with the amount of reading, especially because I'm in another 2 book clubs, and keeping up with all the books whilst I was under the weather the last month was a little bit difficult. And so I have been more so than usual looking at the length of books before deciding how much I want to read them.
No,
Which
I did not realize it's that long. I just remember there were 16 of them.
um, okay, and the poll is ready now. If I've spelt any of the book names wrong, I'm very sorry, but Twitch polls are very annoying. You can't pre-format them, so you just have to make them as you go. The second poll is up now
Okay,
with the
this is
last 5
nice.
books, which contains Legendborn, a Psalm for the Wild Built, Blood over Whitehaven, which has 4 O's in apparently, Nettle and Bone, and the Song of
Dude,
Achilles.
dude over Brighthaven.
Blue. Blue.
This one is so hard.
Yeah, I I I want to read several of the books again.
This one is really hard. Damn, this one is really hard. I really want to read Legendborn,
I
but I
want
also really want you to read Blood over Brighthaven.
I want to read. I feel bad. I really want to read 4 out of 5 of these books. I feel like
I really want to read 4 out of
I feel
5.
like a Psalm for the Wild Built would be a nice change of pace after the last 2 fantasy books we've had, being Babel and The Priory of the Orange Tree, both being long, dense, and not always the most palatable either for content warnings or just because depth of building without action, and
Yeah.
having a more concise and uplifting book I think might be just quite nice. But then I'm just really interested in Blood Over Brighthaven, Song of Achilles, and Legendborn.
Same.
I might go Blood Over Brighthaven. The Dark Academia calls to me. I know I said I wanted something cheerful, and it was like the Dark Academia calls to me. Oh, hi Lush. How are you doing?
I can't not vote for this, so I need to. Oh, this is painful.
I was gonna say, I'm surprised you weren't referencing Song of Achilles, but is this just Denia needs doing Song of Achilles and it needs to happen now?
It's everybody needs to read Song of Achilles. But I also really want. I really want to read Legendborn. I really want to read that book. And I think Blood Over Brighthaven is a fantastic book, especially because of how much you liked Babel. I think you would really like Blood Over Brighthaven. Where I had issues with Babel, I don't have that many issues with Blood Over Brighthaven.
Okay, interesting. Good, getting ready for bed. Oh, sleep well, Lush. I hope you can get some good Western recuperation.
Sleepy time.
I think this may mean we're gonna have a 4-tie poll for the final one. So
I think we're gonna have a 4-way tie for the final poll.
yeah.
Percy Jackson, Legendborn, Blood Over Brighthaven, and the Song of Achilles. That is legitimately pain. I don't know which one to vote for.
Yep.
Honestly, at this point, I wish something like Jade City was in there just because that would be the easy, like, I'll just work for that, I guess.
I mean, it wasn't there earlier on. And it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, you're not wrong. You should have voted for it. I wanted to
Okay.
vote for all of it.
Okay, we're gonna put 5 minutes on this one since it's the final one. But we have the final 4 books that made it through being tied from the first 2 rounds with the Chalice of the Gods, Legendborn, Blood of a Beethoven, and the Song of Achilles.
This is really hard.
You see, the thing, the most difficult part of our book club each month is realizing that I want to read significantly more than 2 books a month.
Same.
Which I feel like.
I probably want to read 4 here.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd quite like to read all 4 of these. I don't know if I could finish all 4 of them in 1 month with how slightly burnt out I am at the moment. But
Yeah, I can't. I wouldn't be able to. I might be able to finish all 4, but I wouldn't finish all 4 in a capacity to talk about them.
that's very fair.
I could maybe do 2.
I feel like I'm quite excited. I made some notes on more so Priory than Barbarians at the Gate for the spoiler area review, which I'm quite excited for.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I don't know what to vote for. I am stunlocked.
Are you gonna do the thing where you wait to see which one's winning and then see what your emotional response is?
Yes. I am. Oh shit, it's tied.
There's a tie.
Oh no!
Oh, hi, Flame, how are you doing? Come in.
What do we do if tie?
I haven't
read
voted
both.
yet because I also haven't decided which one I want to read.
If tie, we read both.
Oh, thank you for the high day, Flame. Wait, I'm gonna try and drink bubble tea. I'm at that point where it's mostly boba rather than tea, and so I'm gonna mute myself, otherwise it's just gonna be horrendous straw noises.
It's going to be... Okay. Huh. I legitimately don't know what to vote for. I'm kinda stuck. I really want... Could live without 1 book here. But I'm like, I can read that another time. I'm really stuck between 3 of them.
Honestly, something which I'm leaning towards is I feel like the Song of Achilles will get nominated again because of how big a book it is.
Yes.
And so I'm leaning towards not voting for it, especially because of one of the books in slot 2 that I'd quite like to read, and I wouldn't want to read both of them in the same month.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree. I'm leaning away from Song of Achilles, even though I really would like you to read it. And I would love to talk about it. I would also like to reread it. But I'm kind of leaning away from it. But that doesn't make it easier, because the other one that I was not leaning towards is the Chalice of the Gods, which I could read a Percy Jackson book at any point in my life.
I was stuck between Legendborn and Blood over Beethoven. That was my dilemma.
I'm stuck there too.
I mean, depending on how not burnt out we are on reading halfway through the book, we might just be able to finish both of them.
Honestly, maybe.
But no, the book club we stand, we will vote. Long. They're both. How long are they? Like 300, 400 pages?
Blood over Brighthaven is 400-ish pages, 400, 500-ish pages.
Is the tradition going to start being we have book club and then bonus book club for when we want to read all of the books?
Maybe. Yeah, Blood over Brighthaven is 400-ish pages, 420. Legendborn is 500.
Okay.
Okay, here's what... I think I know what I'm gonna vote. I think I have a justification for it. I think I have a justification for it. I think I'm voting for Blood Over Brighthaven, because I
Ooh,
think it is going to be the more interesting book to talk about at book club, even though I really want to read Legendborn.
that's fair. It looks like Blood Over
Also, I
Whitehaven's gonna
might.
win then. It's pulling ahead.
Also, I might just read Legendborn anyway.
Who could have
I'm
seen
probably
this
just reading it.
coming? Okay, and
No,
I
what I'm
think.
gonna do? I'm gonna listen to Legendborn as an audiobook. When I go on a
Okay.
run.
I feel like some books are. Yeah, Blood Over Whitehaven's won first one. Let's go. I was gonna say for
Okay.
audiobooks, I quite like audiobooks for certain books, but I feel like The Priory of the Orange Tree or Barbarians at the Gate both would have been very difficult to listen to as audiobooks as opposed to reading them due to the number of
I would not have been able
characters
to.
and switched situations. And so I'm always slightly conscious if it's going into a elaborate world fantasy book to listen to the audiobook of it. But we now need to proceed on to slot 2. We have another section of democracy. This one
Oh, damn.
little bit shorter though. Um, we have some strong nominations. So up first is Odyssey by Stephen
Odyssey.
Fry, which actually myself and Kai both nominated this month. um, yep. So do you want to go through that one? I think you had a little bump prepared for it.
For Odyssey by Stephen Fry. Okay, so remember when we talked about Song of Achilles inspiring a retelling of Greek mythology. This is a retelling of Greek mythology done by Stephen Fry. This is less fiction than Song of Achilles. That name escaped the heck out of me. It's less fiction based than Song of Achilles. This is the fourth one he's done, Stephen Fry has done, in his great retellings of mythology, of Greek mythology, about the story of Odysseus. It's just straight up, it's the retelling of Odysseus. So if you've ever heard the story of Odysseus, or like after the fall of the city of Troy and all of that stuff, that is exactly what this is. It is a interesting retelling of those events with like stuff that we can like how it worked, how it's done, all that stuff. And it's done by the phenomenal Stephen Fry, who I love. It's not that
Yes.
long either.
I will say one thing about this which made me quite excited for it is I believe there was an audiobook of Stephen Fry reading it
Yes.
as well, which
Yes.
as someone who listened to the Stephen Fry Harry Potter audiobooks on many a car and train trip for
Same.
not at present but in years past, big fan of Stephen Fry as a narrator. So
Same. And yes, he does do narration for all of his great mythology books, including Odyssey.
also, just if you want to listen to Stephen Fry narrate things, if you do a month's free Audible subscription, there is like a 40-hour audiobook of him reading through the entire Sherlock Holmes short stories, which comes free with Audible Plus or whatever it's called, Audible Prime.
Yeah, so this is
cool.
just. Yeah, so this is just Stephen. It's essentially like. It's an education of the story of the Odyssey, but it's kind of like a. I don't want to say a modern retelling, it is retold in a modern perspective idea. So he does it with like sharp dialogue, with witty remarks, and like very like almost subversive like ideas and stuff. It is a very approachable way of getting a retelling of these important stories in history that kind of shaped how we tell stories today.
Mhm.
Um, I suggest all of them. I've read and listened to all the previous ones. This is the one I haven't listened to, and that's why I recommended this one. Odyssey by Stephen Fry. Did you want to add anything? I know you were also really excited for that.
Yeah, so I actually I was trying to decide which book to nominate this month because I was trying to decide between this and the first of Stephen Fry's 2 autobiographies, which I'm just going to get the name up because it's escaped me. But I couldn't decide which one to nominate. Yeah, because I believe he's written 2. There's Moab is my washpot, and then there's More Fool Me, I believe. The 2, because he wrote one in the 90s and then one in the late 2000s, and then I believe he went on to write the Fry Chronicles later, covering different parts of his life. But Moab is my washpot is the one which I was most interested in, and I was trying to decide between nominating that and nominating one of the retellings he's done. And I was trying to. The good part of running book club is I get to decide what books I'm nominating today, whereas everyone else, if you submit it after like midday on the day of book club, then I'm no longer checking the form to update it. So I get to be indecisive to the end. And I saw the Odyssey had been nominated, and so I thought, well, I guess that decides for me which one I was leaning to. But yeah, I don't know if I have much more to add. I will say, having not read this Odyssey, but having read the original Odyssey, and that wasn't the easiest read.
No.
I'm kind of excited to get to read the story again, hopefully in a way where I'm more invested in the story rather than I read the Odyssey because I felt like, as a person who likes books and wants to talk about them, I have to read the classics. And so I went through and read a lot of them kind of out of obligation. And I didn't enjoy them that much, which is, it's kind of natural to not enjoy books when you're reading it out of obligation. But I'm excited to get to enjoy the story because of the reframing of it, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in that exact same boat. I have read the Odyssey because I thought I had to read the Odyssey. I did not like the Odyssey.
Yep. But yeah, I do sometimes fear that I've given myself an awful impression of kind of historical fiction or like the classics by forcing myself to read them all back to back, thinking that it was a necessity. I need to go back and read them all just in a more gentle and friendly approach at some point, but in the meantime, there's many other exciting books. The next one up, I believe, you have things to yap about, Kai, is Modern Man in Search of a Soul by C.G. Jung.
Yeah. Okay, so this is Carl Jung, who a lot of people actually probably know about, but don't know that it's him you are talking about. So Carl Jung is the guy that did the idea of what's the word? The personality types, like the hero, the innocent that we have throughout all of not just life, but in storytelling specifically a lot. So stuff like King Arthur as like the king, or Merlin as the wizard in his court. That's all stuff that Carl Jung did, right? As a psychologist. And talked about. This is the first book in like what people suggest you read from Carl Jung, A Modern Man in Search of a Soul, which talks a lot about the early ideas of that and like the early ideas of personas and things we can see not only in ourselves but throughout all of storytelling, and where a lot of that stuff comes from and why we as humans empathize with that a lot or see ourselves in that a lot. I recommended it because one, it's a really interesting topic as a like for yourself idea, but in the capacity of a book club, it's really interesting to think about and see where these archetypes that we are talking about and how they relate to us and where they come from. Specifically because they're all around us. We use them literally every single day in like how we approach stories and ideas.
that sounds very cool. I will admit I didn't have much context for this book when it got recommended, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's one of his. It's technically one of his earliest works. It's one of the earliest works he's done in that whole idea. For stuff like the primitive unconscious and how we relate to these like set idea. Like, do you know the idea of the hero's journey? That like
Yeah. I mean,
framework.
but yeah, here is
That
yes.
is that is a part of like where we attach on like this in that same vein, we attach to these like what's the word? These fundamental like things as well on like the idea of the innocent king or like the idea of
The
the
key
lost
thematic
child, so stuff like Alice
archetypes.
in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what this is about, and how in story, but also in spirituality, in our psycho, in our psyches and everything, that is all a drive in why we tell stories and how we tell stories and how we see ourselves in stories. Um,
Interesting.
it works a lot on like the later work of Sigmund Freud as well, as like a
Okay.
value, as a basis for all of this stuff on like where this idea of like how we attach ourselves comes from.
Okay. That sounds cool. It sounds, how do I phrase it? It sounds like it's kind of a good book to read as homework to better understand other books.
Yes, but also to kind of understand why. So a good example for this, right, is I a lot of the time when I read books, I attach myself and really like specific characters. It's because I am closer aligned to specific archetypes and ideas,
Mhm.
and those characters reflect something in me that I either like or dislike or want to work on or have an idea of.
Mhm.
And that's why you attach. So it's also a way to get like why you like specific characters, what type of characters you enjoy, what you like, what's because a lot of this is very integral. A lot of what we like and attach is based on a lot of these things that we have and like how I'm not that big on like the like hero or the fallen hero archetype because I don't relate to that as hard. But there are other people that do and have that like perspective. It's a very interesting way on like how we engage with stories and why kind of as humanity we put so much importance into stories.
Mhm. Okay, that sounds very cool.
And one warning for people, it doesn't talk the nicest about religion. Uh that's the only thing. Is it kind of approaches religion as like this is a mechanic through which you engage in the world to find value instead of like yes this is the right religion. It doesn't baby on religion, so that's the only thing I'll say. If you're holy about your religion, might not be the book for you.
That's fair. Okay. Next one
It is a
is
psychology book, so
yeah.
psychology doesn't talk nice about his religion in the best of times, so
Yeah, not organized religion for sure. Um,
no, not the biggest fans.
Cults Like Us by Jane Borden, I believe.
This is also a book I recommended.
Yes.
This is just a book that I found that I don't know that much about, but I'm really interested about it. Basically, the idea is it talks about why cult ideology and the idea of cults, specifically in the United States. This approaches it from the aspect of the US, but why cults are so big and almost ingrained in society, and why cult thinking is such a prevalent thing. Because like so this obviously talks about like actual cults, right? Like the NXIVM cult, the LuLaRoe cult, even like some that aren't technically cults but have a cult ideology, like Mormons, talks about that. But also, in a large degree, cults are all throughout society. Like, as much as I think there is stuff attached to it, politics is a large cult. Like, voting red versus blue, for example, in American history. That is a very cult like environment that we find ourselves in. And this is a really interesting idea on how cults, and that, like, the rest of the title is Why Doomsday Thinking Drives America. That idea of why we are so attached to this, like, so many stuff are just cults. Like, self-help is a cult in a large way. It's like, I have the answer, nobody else can give you the answer.
Yeah.
And why that is such a big drive in how stuff works, and how they keep popping up throughout history, and why humans are so drawn to a cult.
That's quite interesting. I suppose one thing which I was going to ask was, when was this written or published? Because I'd be kind of interested if it has like the internet era part of it.
Not right now. It came out last month, the 25th.
Oh, perfect.
It's like new. Yeah, it's like new.
Oh, hi Himatsuge. Thank you so much for the follow. Welcome to the library. I hope you're having a good day. Welcome.
Welcome to the library. Yeah, so
That's
it's
exciting.
very new.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very new on, like, why. And it gets, like, pretty in depth on, like, why even school life, and, like, how some academia institutions kind of compel us into this brainwashing mindset because we don't approach them in the right way. Because school as a system is really broken. Academics is fantastic. School as a system is broken in a large way. It's a
Okay.
really interesting read.
That does
I am
sound
really
very
curious about
interesting.
this. Yeah, because we are very. I feel like in society we are very, almost like me and what I want and what I believe, and very cult like, and like me and my own in protection. And I wonder where that is coming from, why that happens, why this, like, cult ideology is so prevalent in society.
Oh, I should swap onto the next book. The next
Yes.
one is, I realized that in my attempt to get the full title in, I managed to miss out the author, which is very remiss of me. But the full title is Soldiers and Ghosts: A History of Battle in Classical Antiquity by J. Lendon. This is one that I think is going to be quite interesting for the kind of it's in terms of its military history, but it's ancient military history.
Ooh.
So it's discussing strategies of ancient Sparta, Macedon, and Rome, specifically the era about the decline of the Roman Empire under the age of Homer. And so it's talking about the different technological advances and how the different armies were able to advance, and how the traditions of each of the military forces either embraced or condemned the different technological advancements that went on to help them in conflict, which I think is quite interesting. A bit of a different
That is
theme to
interesting. Cool.
a lot of the stuff that's often covered, but yeah, a little bit of historic non-fiction, specifically military history.
That is very sick. I'm really curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of military history about, like,
I feel like I
ancient
haven't
Roman.
read any books similar to it, which makes me
I
kind
haven't
of
either.
curious. Um, I don't have too much context on the author, or the book itself, with not knowing too much about this kind of genre of writing, but it seems to get like good reviews. And
Yeah, that seems really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read much military history except, like, the one I've read is when or previously mentioned there's a few books you need to read. I read The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Yeah.
That's the only military history I've ever
I
read.
was just like, do I include that as saying I have read a book in this field? But yeah, that's the only one for me too. So
Yeah, so I know nothing about this genre. That sounds really interesting though.
yeah, I feel like, I don't know. I know it doesn't. Well, it won't have any tanks in it, with being set in the fall of the Roman Empire, but it should still be pretty interesting.
Dude, that would be a revelation if we read the book about ancient war and it's just a tank.
it
That would be
it
kind
it.
of cool.
Oh my gosh.
Denya, we need to write a historical fiction book where it's Rome, it's ancient Rome, but tank.
Is this our fantasy setting and it's just ancient Rome but with tanks? But we call it
Yes,
sci-fi.
yes,
But it's like tanks with hoverboards instead of caterpillar tracks to make it sci-fi.
yes. Now we're cooking. We're cooking.
I'm not. Okay, I'm not sure what level of chef work is happening, but onto the final book. Potentially the most famous of the one on the list, or at least classically,
Probably top.
The Interpretation of Cultures by Clifford Geertz, which is one of the first big, I want to say, or one of the key anthropology books of the period when it was published in the 70s.
Yeah.
I believe it's won several major awards. I can't remember them off the top of my back. I'm just clicking over the tab that has a description of it because I don't have it open. But yeah, it was one of the first main books that kicked off the modern understanding of cultural anthropology, and how the cultures are analysed and studied, and the context and framing of how it's to do so. And it's structured as a series of related essays, and it's arguing for a new approach to anthropology, which emphasises interpretive analysis of culture rather than it's my understanding, certainly not being an expert in the field, but some of the context of it was arguing against the kind of cultural analysis through the framework of like colonialist expectations, which had previously been the precedent, and it was advocating for a more contextual approach where it was cultural analysis through the framework of the culture itself rather than its difference to a like classical European upper class educated framework, which is good and interesting, and yes, and it is just very well reviewed. It's one which I've heard a lot of things about but haven't read. I nominated this one because it was recommended to me a while back, and I hadn't got around to reading it because although I found it interesting as a topic, it didn't feel like a book that I would kind of pick up day to day, and I avoided it through that for quite a while, and so I thought the non-fiction category would be a good time and place to nominate it.
It's a very good fiction book, non-fiction category book.
Mhm.
Because I wouldn't pick it up on my day to day either. But I know about this book. One of the you talked about like some of the things that got like talked about for it.
Mhm.
It is it's still on the Times Literary Supplement, one of the most important books published since World War II.
Yeah.
It is a highly, highly influential and important book in the study of cultures in an anthropological sense. I have also gotten recommended this book and also been like, I don't think it's a today book. It's not
Yeah.
like I wake up on a Tuesday and go, I want to read the
I've
interpretation
been
of
waiting
cultures.
until I have like a long train journey and happen to have time to pick it up from a library or a bookstore beforehand to bring with me.
Yeah. Uh, It's not a book I pick up on a Tuesday and go, yeah, I want to read this.
Yeah.
But it's a very important publication in this field, which is a very interesting field, and it is a very cornerstone of this idea and field and everything about it.
Mhm. Um. Yeah. I think. Wait. Let me count. We can do it in one poll. Okay. Nice. I only have to suffer through Twitch polls once for this category. Um.
Oh Yeah, because it's 5. Because me and you double recommended the one.
Yeah.
Let's go.
uh,
That's so lucky. If we just didn't choose the same one, we couldn't
imagine
have
if
done
we
it in
had
one fall.
6. I would have I would have added more books for my to be read list to flesh it
Oh,
out.
that's so funny. That's so funny.
Once again, the character limit is getting to me, so I can't write out the full title for Man in
What?
Search of a
You
Soul.
can't write out. You can't write out Soldiers and Ghosts: A History of Battle in Classic
I
Antiquity.
haven't even got to Soldiers and Ghosts. Da, da, da.
Honestly, this one there's 2 in here that I would really like to read. Like curious about reads. And then there's one that I love Stephen Fry. And
I'm
I want to
afraid it's going to have to be interpretation of cult. Please blame the Twitch character limits, not me. Only one of these books is about cults.
interpretation of cult.
I tried my best. I could have got the U in there, but I couldn't have got any further.
Interpretation of cult you.
Cult you.
That's a really funny interpretation of cult. Honestly, this one is also kind of hard to vote for. There's 2 I really want to read, and then I also really want to Odyssey.
Yeah.
Because I love Stephen Fry.
I feel like Modern Man in Search of a Soul would be beneficial for me to read in terms of I often feel like I don't have the full tools to analyze and especially to vocalize and contextualize my analysis and feeling about books and characters in them, and I feel like that might be helpful in building up that skill, and so I do quite want to read that. I feel like Soldiers and Ghosts is quite different from a lot of the books that often get nominated, and because of that is interesting, especially since I know quite a lot of people like tanks and history about military stuff, and so it's kind of a nice halfway point in terms of accessibility.
That's my thing too.
But then
I'm stuck
I like all of these. Once again, I want to read several books. The Interpretation of Cultures, Not Cults. I was one of the books I nominated, so naturally I'm quite excited about that. Odyssey I was going to nominate, but Kai submitted it before me, so also feel positive to move back to that. And Cults Like Us is just interesting to me in terms of like a hopefully a well articulated structure idea on like increasing circles and patterns of like radicalization and isolation, which is one of like main underlying themes of cults and how they form. So it'd be interesting to read one that's written in the kind of especially post-lockdown modern age of it. I think. Which is one of the reasons why I asked when it was written, because if it was written 10 or 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't be as interested, but I haven't read anything that is more than like a WordPress sort of. I've not read a full book on that topic post the kind of like mid 2010s algorithm-based internet age.
I'm stuck on like 3 books that I really want to read. I really want to read Cults Like Us because I agree with you. It's such an interesting topic, especially in a post like COVID lockdown world and like in this like current time where it is such a big mental drive in America but all around the world. I think it's a very interesting topic. Modern Man in Search of a Soul, I am just interested in the topic about it. I've gotten more into Carl Jung's stuff, Carl Jung stuff, and this is the first one in the series, and I haven't read it, and I'm really curious about it, and like the idea of like the primitive collective unconscious and why we attach stuff, and even why dreams are so important in society, and why stories and dreams and all this influences us. But I also really want to read Odyssey, and Soldiers and Ghosts is something I just don't read. Like I said, I've read The Art of War, and that's it. So I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
I think I kind of want to read Modern Man in Search of a Soul.
Oh.
I think it would be a really interesting topic on like book club, on like these archetypes and these theories of like psychology and why and all of this stuff.
There is, I think, 30 seconds left to go in the poll. If anyone is being indecisive, now is your time to make dramatic and strong decisions.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Swing the vote. Go.
I think I made quite a good countdown clock. I think I did a decent job.
Yeah, that
It
was
looks
actually
like
really good.
Modern Man in Search of a Soul is leading by C.G. Jung. Was that Carl Jung?
Yeah, Carl Jung.
Carl Jung.
He is German.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, he's Carl Gustav Jung.
Ah, the Gustav would have given it away. There
Yeah,
we have it.
The Gustav really gives it away sometimes.
I was just like, oh, Jung. It could be like a Korean surname, Gustav.
Gustav. And
Yeah.
then you're like, German.
There we have it. Wait, I wanna. Can I view the breakdown of polls? I'm being a boomer. Oh, I found the tab. Perfect. Look at me go. So, Modern Man in Search of a Soul wins. There we have it. We have our books for this month.
That's cool. I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not excited because I'm reading 2 more books on top of it.
Which are the other 2 books you're reading?
Oh, I'm reading Legendborn. It's already in my. I'm definitely reading that. And I'm heavily considering just adding Odyssey by Stephen Fry. Because I
Okay.
like Stephen Fry. I like Stephen Fry.
I was gonna say, depending on if there's a good audiobook, or if I can find a good way of listening to the Stephen Fry Odyssey audiobook, I might just pick that up in my free time.
Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I kind of want it. So thank you, Stephen Fry.
Thank
I
you,
love
Stephen
you.
Fry. But yeah, okay, there we have it. There are books for next month. We have Blood Over by Taven by Emma Wang, and we have A Modern Man in Search of a Soul by Carl Gustav Jung. So I'll make the announcement post later tonight, or my stream schedule tonight. I'm not sure if I'm streaming tomorrow. If I'm streaming tomorrow, it'll be stream scheduled tonight and announcement tomorrow. If I'm not streaming on Monday, it'll be announcement tonight and stream schedule on Monday. And there we have it. So now that we've done our 2 categories of voting, fantasy and sci-fi. Oh, we did fantasy and sci-fi first. I was just clicking back to check the author name for Blood Over by Toven. My brain was being smooth. I didn't have a note of it. But we have decided on the kind of dark academia, high fantasy book about the first female mage who's made it into this. I forget what the term of it is, the High Majesty, and the unlikely adventures she goes on with the janitor who's assigned to help her, and how she combats the people who just don't want anyone new to join the order, which I think is going to be quite interesting. But we now have our spoilery review of The Priory of the Orange Tree. So if this is a book you are interested in reading and you haven't read it along with the book club, I would suggest vanishing now. We will now have full spoilers.
Okay, I leave.
Spoilers.
No, I'm joking.
This is the warning. I have spoiler time written on the screen in big handwriting. I'm being as clear as I can. So something which I didn't talk about much in the first half because I had examples and so I kind of wanted to wait to this part, is I love a lot of the just writing line by line in this book.
Yeah.
There was one which I was absolutely just floored by this line. It was between Janat and Ruth and Nickley, which I don't know if you'll
Yeah.
have got to it because it's around the halfway point in the book. But the conversation, I'm just going to read the full snippet, and there's a specific sentence which destroyed me as a human. But did you ever seek the golden clutch in regards to some golden wyvern treasure? And Nickley snorted. The notion, oh, I tiptoed to the entrance once or twice, but the love of your life was an object coward. Even as a boy, I feared death too much to seek it. And then Janat replies, well, I can only be grateful for the softness of your spine. I confess to fearing your death too. Which that line of I can only be grateful for the softness of your spine, that made me I was so invested in Janat as a character who wasn't present, just in like the small snippets of him speaking, and I was kind of like vicariously invested in Dr. Woo's from wanting to know more about Janat and his history. And yeah, I don't know your thoughts on that, but that one just kind of
That's really.
I mean getting punched. But yeah,
I did get to that. I think I DNF'd right, just after that.
mhm.
I don't remember the exact like page or like section I DNF'd in, but I do remember that. So I definitely DNF'd right after that.
Yeah,
I don't remember much after that. But that is really pretty.
yeah.
No, I wish I also went through and got some quotes out of it because that is really pretty. I do like a lot of the like I say prose. This isn't a heavy prose book. It is just a really beautifully written book, in my opinion.
Yeah, I liked
It's
how.
not like sorry, it's not like for people that are wondering, it's not like a Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which is a heavy prose book. It's a very like I would say it's a bit more prosy than like a Brandon Sanderson because Brandon Sanderson writes in a very like clear, just like concise, almost like a writing sense. This is a bit more prose-like, but it's just a very beautifully written book, in my opinion.
I really liked the writing of this book. Something which I also found nice was I felt the chapters or the part chapters from different characters' perspectives were all tonally written slightly different. And although he
Yeah,
wasn't my favorite, I did kind of like a lot of the kind of snappy, reductive, grumpy humor with which the Nickley Ruse, the Doctor's perspective, was written in. I don't know why,
yeah,
but when he called someone a witless cabbage, I was giggling about that for days.
yeah.
I
It is. It's a really good.
But yeah, I enjoyed how the writing style adapted to each character and mirrored their personality to an
Thing.
extent in it. Um,
Specifically, I agree with that. My favorite one was also Nicholas.
mhm,
Nicholas Bruce's chapters were always really entertaining to read from like a reading perspective on like how it works for him. I
yeah,
also really liked I don't know how you would say her name, but Tane or Tane. I also really liked her
interesting.
chapters.
I okay. I didn't really find Tane too interesting as a character. I was gonna get into this in the spoilery section, but when I read through the book, I found myself interested in Tane's perspective because it was the only person who was talking positively about dragons. And at the start of the book, you don't know
Yeah.
if the differentiation between dragon and wyvern is just a cultural differentiation of two different kingdoms calling something slightly different versions of the same, until you find out later on that there is a difference, but the cultures that dislike wyverns group dragons in with them because of
Yeah.
obvious similarities. Um, and so I was really interested in Iad for that because, I want to know about dragons. But I
Proper.
found her the least nuanced character out of the central crop. Um,
I can see that.
which I feel like it felt almost archetypal compared to a lot of the other characters, in that underdog who worked themselves to the bone, who, I don't know why, but her rival she had in the training school was just comically evil. I've forgotten his name, but the fellow she sword fights from the noble house at the start.
I forgot his name. I know who you're talking about. I just forgot his. What's his freaking name?
He has no impact in the story. I wondered if he was getting set up to like later be revealed that like someone with his family name was going to turn up and be evil later on, and that there was going to be like, oh, he was just evil to Tane because his family is like generally no good or whatever. But no, he was just comically evil for the first third of the book and then went away. He would like refer to her as a servant and like insult her and like talk about how only like those who were descendants were worthy of anything, and it was just like outright horrific for no later reason. Like there was absolutely no framing, especially when you get the reveal later on that Tane was actually a descendant of one of the characters significant to the story, with being the descendant of one of the gem wielders, the first sealed away. The something one?
Tarosa. His name is Tarosa.
Tarosa. That's the evil so-and-so. But yeah.
It just came to me. Tarosa.
But yeah.
Tarosa of like Clan Meducci or some shit. I don't fucking remember.
Clan Meducci is the title that the Dragon Riders got at the end. I can't remember his family name. But yeah, I was a bit perplexed by him just being so one note and evil.
I just remember calling him the asshole because he was just an asshole. just an asshole.
I kept thinking like half of Tane's scenes are her feeling like she's not good enough, or just being bullied by this evil man who she has to work with. And I was just like, well, okay, surely he's going to appear later and he's going to be relevant because he's been such an extreme character and he's been present throughout. And then he never showed up again, and I was so confused.
I did not like him.
Yeah, I didn't find him particularly interesting. I was kind of waiting for something like, oh, he's actually like an illegitimate child that's been, like knows he doesn't have true parentship but has been smuggled into this position, and so that's why he's so evil, so like pretentious about his like blood right and all that stuff. But there was just no depth added at any point to his being mean, which that bit I found a little bit grating. I do always enjoy a training arc, but I didn't find Tane very endearing.
I can see why. I really like Tane, but I like characters like Tane a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hey Tusky, how are you doing? But yeah, I think I really like Tane's dragon. Big fan of the dragon. Melantia, I think, or something along those lines.
Namathune. Yeah.
Oh
yeah. Namathune.
But yeah, the dragon was really cool. I wanted to hang out with the dragon more. Didn't get too much.
No. I really like Namathune. Namathune is really cool.
But yeah, I really liked all the characters. I will say, I hinted at it earlier. I knew this was a sapphic romance going into it, but I was surprised when it was Eads and Sabran. I read like the first few chapters and I was just like, oh, I can't wait till Eads goes back to the priory and like encounters Tane or someone else and like gets a girlfriend. And then it was Sabran and I was just like, oh, I didn't see this coming. I was just like, wait, oh, okay. Paragraph of Eads just going, yeah, Sabran's hot, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not the pair that I thought it was gonna be. Which
It was really interesting for me with Tane, by the way. Talking about that, it was really interesting for me to how Tane is an Arrow Ace character.
oh, are they? Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they're fully Arrow and Ace, which is really interesting to me because it kind of colors. I don't know if you figured it out in the story. I've not read the whole book, but I know about it, and it colors what I know about Tane. I found out about it before I tried to read the book a second time, and I really liked approaching it from the knowledge that she is, which is really cool to me.
I think that's cool, but how do I phrase it? I don't think it was relevant in the book unless I missed anything.
No, it's not really,
Yeah, it's one of
which
those
I
things of
like.
I don't think it was mentioned in text, which I think it's cool when you have characters that are queer and like represent different groups. But also feel like she was just a character that didn't interact with anyone in that context of
No,
yeah. So I didn't know or get a hint of that reading through the book. I just kind of thought she was busy being in prison or on a training arc for most of the book. Um, so I yeah, but that is cool that how do I phrase it? Every now and then I always get a little bit I'm always a bit tentative when I find out there's a character that it's not mentioned at all in text, and although it doesn't like disagree with any of it, but when they get assigned something, I'm always kind of a bit
so
cautious of
okay,
like
so I
this
just
wasn't
looked
in the
it up.
main text. The
I just looked it up, right? It
mhm.
was the author that posted it herself while she was
Okay.
writing the book.
Oh, interesting.
Um, so she asks, was the comment was that was Tav or was Tane gonna be sapphic? And she said, I used to think that she would end up being sapphic with Susa, but writing the character, um, she ended up more Ace,
Mhm.
and specifically Arrow Ace, and that is where I wrote her from
Okay,
after I realized that she was not going to be sapphic.
that's fair. I mean, did you get to the point where you realize where she's not gonna end up with Susa?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I know about it. I didn't read it.
Yeah, that one caught me off guard. This was actually one of the bits at the start because I believe the name. This might be me misremembering, but when Roos confirms the girl that's been identified, I thought Roos was falsely saying, "Oh yeah, this is the girl," to a random woman, and
Yeah.
it wasn't actually Susa. And so it wasn't until like 500 pages later when um I this is the spoiler section, I can say it, when
Yeah.
Tane sees Susa and is dragged to the prison in the seconds before Susa's execution. And I was
Yep.
just like, I thought it wasn't her. I thought it was another woman that had been falsely arrested, and the Nicholas has just nodded to any woman being the person who helped him to kind of indicate his like self-serving nature. And I thought it was done intentionally for that. I thought from the original description, I think potentially because they didn't use her name and instead used her
Yep.
job title to identify her, that it was just another woman that was being falsely blamed for it. Um, and so I was emotionally
No.
distraught by that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if I just missed that, but I was I didn't realize. Yeah.
No, I think that was yeah. I would need to read it like fully through, but yeah, that's ooh.
Yeah. But I really like this book. um,
I
I'm a big fan of the world it built, in that it feels lived in and that we got realistic, incomplete descriptions from several characters. Um, I do kind of wish the book was in a slightly different order
shorter.
narratively, which I kind of hinted at earlier, because
Yeah.
I think the main actions that happen throughout the start of the book is you naturally have Trude progressing in her training, but because that doesn't directly relate to any of the key stakes as outlined in the book, it doesn't feel kind of plot significant in a direct sense in terms of the politics at play with the fight against the Nameless One. And so there's Sabin's wedding, and then there's the death of Sabin's husband and Sabin being pregnant. And the other plot point to happen is Loth's journey to the Draconic Kingdom of Innis, I believe it was. And then the subsequent trip to the Priory, which I found that quite interesting. I thought Loth was framed. This is something which I specifically found good about the book, which is I think Loth is framed as being the most well-rounded, sensible character of the four key narrators for the first portion of the book. And then when he reaches the Priory, it is kind of laid bare how brainwashed he is to some extent by having grown up in the faith of the saint and the seven virtues, and how in his eyes to practice any religion other than their own is blasphemy, and this kind of extreme reaction. I think it's really interesting to set him up as being the compassionate, the kind, the calm character, and then use that to demonstrate how deeply ingrained these beliefs are in the different kingdoms. I thought that was really good, both as a this happens to everyone when it's around them kind of general narrative pointer, but also as a good way of setting up without a bunch of meetings of royals sniffing grumpily at each other as to why it would be so difficult for the Draconic kingdoms to either the Draconic in the sense of they are flesh kings under the Nameless One, or Draconic in the sense of the dragon riders of the ocean, of why they would struggle to ally with the saint with Sabon.
I do like that as well. The using, well, not using, but setting him up as like the sane one, just to like, it is using him to show that, which is a really interesting mechanic. Because when you read his chapters, also when you read about him at the start, you really do think he is the like uber competent sane one that's got no problems and like is the almost cold rational one of the group, and then nope.
No.
Nope.
I will say, if I had one thing to be grumpy with this book for, they narratively, why did Kit need to go to the Draconic Kingdom and die? I think he could have just stayed in the capital and like finally confessed to his like crush who'd been writing letters to. The amount of emotional damage at Sabran's wedding when the ladies of the inner chamber were gossiping, and she remarked that she'd stopped receiving letters from her secret admirer. I was not happy about that. I was just like, and you never will again. No.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't get why he had to go either. I don't get it. He could have just died.
I didn't know if it was almost the kind of like, because the book wanted to establish stakes because there wasn't going to be any action or any dramatics happening for the next
For like
300 pages. And so they felt like they needed to do something to frame it as being kind of like serious dire conflict. So maybe that's why it was added in. But I feel like it almost would have been more interesting if Kit was left. But that's also just because I thought he was like kind of sweet and nice, and I didn't want him to get crushed by a boulder.
I also liked Kit. I think he was nice and sweet and didn't deserve to die in the Dragon Kingdom.
Yeah. I will say one thing which towards the end, I believe it's never clarified if the princess of the Draconic Kingdom is if they slay the nameless one in time, or if she's already become a flesh ruler, like a flesh host for Fidril, was it? The second dragon?
Yeah.
I believe that's not clarified at the end of the book, which I thought was just like good writing, because it feels like so many things get tied together with a bow. If there were to just be like a mini squad trip to double check she's still alive, that would kind of feel too neat for how convoluted a world it is. And so I'm glad there's some threads that are left open. I almost wish that we didn't know that Eads got invited back to be the prioress, and that was left unopened.
That would also be cool.
But,
because it does feel like a little bit of a bow gets wrapped. From what I know about the ending, well, I say what I know about the ending. I know exactly how the book ends. It does get kind of wrapped up a lot, specifically for a lot of the main characters.
yeah.
Where everything kind of gets, and I wish more of that was kind of like with Yes, you're right. It's fire drill. Yeah.
Yeah.
With that, I wish more was left like that, a bit of like messy, because it is a very, I don't want to say messy world, but it's kind of convoluted and like
Yeah.
and then all the main characters are like, yes, Iad gets invited there. Yes, Tane gets Tane. I don't know how to say her name. Tane, whatever the
I
heck.
also wasn't sure how to say it, but yeah.
Where she gets to go to the like place and see. Yeah, I wish there was more. Like
I do think, I'm not sure how it would be done, but I do kind of wish that at least one or two of the parts of the story happened in a slightly different order. Which I'm just going to go through a quick run through of the like key 5 events that happen in the direct preceding part to the big conclusion, just to emphasize how rushed it feels, which is Ruse is on a pirate ship trying to find the one of the two trees, the one that isn't the orange tree, the priory of the orange tree that's discussed. There's the second sort of power generating tree, which is it a hawthorn, I think? I've forgotten what type of tree it is.
I think it's a hawthorn.
But Ruse is heading with the scariest pirate ship in the land, which also happened to have Tane's dragon on the ship. And so there's like a suitable amount of framework for that setup, and that feels very natural. But then, in very quick succession, they find the island, the tree is there, but the tree is chopped down, and it turns out it would only ever bear one of its magical fruit. They go to kill Ruse, and I'm still not sure how. Because separately, Tane has commandeered the vessel which Loth was on whilst trying to be an envoy for Sabron, and has used the stone magic to fly across the ocean to single-handedly attack and take down the pirate ship and free her dragon. In the process of that attack, causes mayhem from where on the beach the pirates are trying to kill Ruse, and so he like half gets away losing an arm, only for the original saint, which is just what I'm going to refer to as the witch, because we could say the witch of the woods, where she then steals away Ruse, and then the dragon and Tane go back, and they eventually end up flying back to the capital along as a missive from after going to the priory to get the fruit and fighting the witch again, and then bringing the fruit back to save Eads on the request of Loth. And then you can see how many things happen in the last 200 pages, and it's driving me mad trying to articulate it. And then from there, Ruse just appears on their doorstep mysteriously, because the Witch of the Wood has tried to bribe him to killing Sabran, because to killing Eads, because the witch fears Eads and knows in the fight to come she might defeat her. Don't really know why the witch is scared of Eads. I didn't see the reason why she would be a direct threat. And then Tane has also arrived in the city because she needed to deliver the fruit from the priory back to Eads because she got poisoned at some point. And then there's a giant fight in an ocean. There's just like a fleet fight between two navies, some dragons, some wyverns, and the nameless one is killed in the fleet fight. That felt like an insane amount of things to happen all at once, and I kind of
That's
wish...
not even the last thing Tane does.
Which is the last thing Tane does? Tane kills the nameless one. She's the...
Yeah. Okay, so this is, by the way, for everybody wondering how we keep talking about how set this last part of the book is. Tane then goes to her ancestral home, the
Yep.
Isle of Kamuradu,
Yep.
where she has a spirit vision. Sees her like descendant, I'm pretty sure, called Neporo. Then starts reawakening the mulberry tree that was there at the island, and it is implied that she is going to do more there because she is a first blood.
There's like the inference that there's now going to be two priories, because I kind of took it as the priory of the orange tree fell, and then the priory of the hawthorn tree, or the witch's tree that she ate from, is now going to rise in the orange tree's place. Why I was so surprised when Sabran was like, not Sabran, when Eads was kind of confirmed to be the new prioress, roughly.
Yeah.
Because I thought that the priory had fallen, the priory of the orange tree had fallen in the fight with the witch, at least to some great extent. But yeah, you can kind of tell, because that sounds like a reasonable amount of things to happen in an 800-page book. That all happens in less than 200 pages.
That's like the last 200.
In the first 600 pages, there is a marriage, 2 dragon attacks, and Kit getting injured, Kit getting killed by an earthquake. This is the 600 pages versus the last 200. I really enjoyed the book. I wish somehow it was spread out more evenly, even if the book was longer. I would take it being another 200 pages. I think if there was more space specifically between Ruse being delivered into Sabran's court, if he had arrived before Tane and there was time for him to sit in the court, and we almost got to see him deliberating on whether or not to try and kill Eads while she was asleep with the poison. Also, Ead's sisters, who she trained with her whole life, assassinated her and thought they killed her during this mini section as well. So many things happened. Also, Margaret got engaged. There was also a coup. I forgot about the coup. So many things happened in the last 200 pages. It is absolute madness. And they were all interesting, and they all felt reasonable, but it did feel jarring, the change of pace. It did feel rushed. And so I kind of wish... It's difficult to say rearrange it, because all the characters do pull together to be interconnected at the end so nicely, but I do wish there was more space, and I think the easiest one to do that would be with Nikolai, to have him maybe if he's abandoned by the pirates once they get the map, and then is then taken by the witch and immediately then sent to the court, to Sabran's court, to try and kill Eads. I think that would make a lot of sense structurally and make it feel less compact, because I don't know how else you would pull it apart outside of just having more time between maybe if the training the Eads gave to Tane went into more depth, because Tane does also become a witch because she eats the fruit of the orange tree that was brought back to revive Eads. And that happens in this mini segment as well. And it's just kind of like glossed over, and oh, and this conversation must end because Eads and Eads and Tane need to go train together. And maybe if that bit was more fleshed out, it would feel less rushed. I don't know. Oh, hi, Adrian. Welcome in. Oh,
Yeah,
thank you for the
it's
hydrate. I actually need
I
to
don't know.
sprint to get a drink, but so much happened at the end. Death!
Yeah, I almost
Yeah.
don't know how you fix that last part of the book to like make it not be as rushed
Mhm.
because
It's
yeah, I
also
don't know.
wonderfully interconnected. Yeah, I think Ruse is the most movable part, but yeah.
I think the answer to the book, weirdly, is to not add or to not move that section, but to add more to the middle section
Mhm.
and have a little bit more action in the middle section so that so that it feels like more of a ramp up of action, not just like uh vibes. Oh fuck, everything is happening.
Maybe
Uh
if we saw in the section where Loth and Kit briefly, and then just Loth left the Draconic Kingdom, if we got the perspective of the princess,
yeah,
the I can't remember what the term that was used for her. It wasn't the matron of the kingdom. But yes, the princess who
yeah.
ruled instead of the Flesh King that was the host of Phaedril. If we got some of her perspective, like dealing with Phaedril and maybe what happens to her, and that gets a bit action packed. I am gonna
That
have to
would have been
sprint to
more.
get a drink,
Yeah.
but that could happen in the middle where all of the like romance between Eads and Sabran marrying a man and Tane going to prison and Ruse going on like a nice little holiday trip kind of all happened together. That would have provided more tense moments there, because I imagine it's some part in that arc that you stopped reading from my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
So
do need to.
I think
I'm gonna sprint to grab a drink, so I won't be able to hear. But if I don't know, yeah, if you're
she's
free to yap for like 2 minutes.
yeah, I can yap. I can yap. I like yapping.
I don't want to add to my hydrate debt, so I'm going to get a drink. Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah, no hydrate debt here. Even though I am partially the cause of the hydrate debt even existing. I don't know. I really liked this book. It was a really interesting book. It's just very a lot. Also, hi Pesky. Hi Adrian. How is everyone tonight? We've been yapping about books, so is Pesky still here? Pesky Time Pirate. I see Adrian is here, but I do not see a Pesky. It makes me sad that there is no Pesky. Also, how are you, Restmore? Nice to see you. Pesky redeemed a hydrate. Pesky, Danya's not here right now. What do you mean, excuse me? I didn't see you typing. You were not typing. I saw you. I saw the book. I just didn't see you typing, so I didn't know if you were still here. Sure, I was playing. What are you playing? You're playing BG3. Please tell me you're not playing BG3. You are gonna get me to unplay BG3. I must play less BG3. Valorant. Okay, you're not gonna get me to play. Actually, I did say I want to play more Valorant with Denya. I do want to do that Valorant thing where we like queue ranked. We're like 5-stack ranked. And see if we can rank up. Oh, IGL for us. Because I cannot shoot. Actually, Denya is also a good IGL. Maybe Denya IGLs us. And I look pretty. I'll play smokes. I'll play smokes. As soon as I don't have to play duelist. Wait, do we have Pesky, do you know if we have anybody in our like circle that plays duelist? I don't know anybody that plays duelist. I know Denya and me play smokes slash Senti. Actually, I play more initiator now. So we have an initiator player. We have a smokes player. No one that comes to mind. Crap. Sage. Huh. Yeah, I used to play a lot of Viper. And then I played KJ. And then I started playing Sova and Fade. And now I play Gecko. Gecko and I wanna play Teo. I wanna play more Teo. Teo. Gecko Teo. Tejo. I'll play Gecko Teojo for us. We need somebody that can play Breach. We need a Breach player. Because then we can Teo Breach. And if we can play Teo Breach in comp, nobody else is going to be playing Teo Breach, which means they're going to win. But we still need a duelist player. I'm not built to be a duelist player. I'm built to sit on my iPad. Maybe. Okay, hear me out. No duelist comps. That's the only thing we ever play. I like the idea of no duelist comps. We just play like...
Hello?
Okay, but we need some...
I
Hello.
have returned and you're talking about Valorant.
Yeah.
um.
Pesky is playing Valorant.
Ooh. I'm scared of
And I
Valorant.
said...
They keep adding agents.
Yeah, but you did say on the
I did
post
say
you
if you
made a
ping
few
me, I'll
days...
play Valorant.
Yeah. And I did say that me and Toad and some other people talked about like 5-stacking comp and stuff.
I feel like the scary thing
Seeing
with
how
stacking comp is getting people that all like line up suitably in terms of sweatiness and skill level. Because
that is true.
I am not good at aiming, but I've also spent many hours in Valorant, and so if I go into a lobby with new people, they may frag better than me, but also I would I would just like random give call outs that would confuse them.
What book are we discussing?
Oh, hi,
The
tax
Priory of
evasion.
the Orange
We were
Tree.
discussing the Priory of the Orange Tree, and then we got distracted by the fact that I went to get a beverage. Are we excited to hear the opening of a Dr. Pepper bottle?
Yes.
Okay, 3, 2,
Yes.
1. That was very anticlimactic. I'm a little bit disappointed.
That was kind of climactic.
Oh, well, at least I get my
Well,
hydrate. No more owing Adrian.
yeah, you get something to drink.
Yeah, I finished the bubble tea too quickly.
We did mention something, me and Pesky. We realized something.
Mhm.
We don't have a duelist player in our friend group.
Leo's played Jet in the past.
Yeah, but Leo's played like 3 hours of Valorant total, probably.
Yeah. um. Yeah, I was gonna say the only people
I,
who I think would be
I,
No. Wait, what
yeah,
does
the
Lily
like,
play?
good
I
question. What does
I feel
Lily
like I've
play?
seen Lily play Jet before quite a bit, but I don't know if I'm imagining that.
What does my I should know this. She's my step. I don't even
I
know.
don't know what's going on with the sibling family tree for Michu. It's a scary place.
Oh, this is not Michu's side of the family that's
Oh, is
being
this
weird.
Yuto's side of the family?
It's the Yuto side of the family
Oh
being
my
weird. Okay,
gosh.
so I am Yuto's brother, but I'm also married to Yuto and Val and Yuto are married.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm technically Lily's uncle and stepfather.
Back to complex diplomatic relationships. I really like the Priory of the Orange Tree.
I also really like the Priory of the Orange Tree.
I would like to reread it. I would like to read it more slowly than I read it this time. I will also say it just has a really nice book cover.
It
I
does have a really cool book cover.
the sometimes judging a book by its cover pays off, because I picked The Priory of the Orange Tree up in a bookshop because I saw the cover and it was beautiful. And it might be my favourite book club book so far this year, I think. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I think so. Okay. It took me like 2 minutes to decide if I was going to stand by this statement, but I think I do. But yeah,
I need to think about it, but I think I kind of agree. It was really good.
yeah.
Also, you were right, by the way.
Oh, about what? Everything?
We replaced Duelist.
Oh, nice. Let's go. Look at me knowing
No,
things.
there's clips of we playing Raze, Jet, Reyna. We in fact played a lot of Duelist. It turns out.
We're really ready to fight, is what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, bro.
The Priory of the Orange Tree. It's a book that I want to. You want to reread it? I want to read it fully through, very slowly. I think if it's not a book club book and I am in like a very world building like character mood, I think I would love this book.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I might, despite the fact I enjoyed both of them a lot, I feel like good segue onto the next book. Reading it and Barbarians at the Gate at the same time was kind of difficult because they're both so heavy character building without much happening till the end. And because Barbarians of the Gate is essentially like historic journalism of the coverage of how the deal happened and broke, you expect it to be slow build up than everything all at once. But the fact that we read two character based, quite long backstory, slow build, big crescendo books in the same month, I feel like did a slight disservice to both of them.
A little bit.
But I really enjoyed both of them. I will say, the person who I'm most interested in is, I've forgotten her name, which is ridiculous of me. But I put my notes on my phone, which is what I use for face tracking, and did not move them to my computer, so I'm doomed to get it wrong. But I wish there was more discussion of the board member's wife, who did a lot of the brokering between the teams to get them to agree and continue making contact when the businessmen themselves ruined their diplomatic relationships. Who kind of do you remember who I mean? The fashion designer wife who would reach out to people and say, "No, you got on so well. I think you should talk again about seeing if you get a split of the deal." And then similarly with the wife of one of the other main characters who ran the press agency that managed a lot of it. I think they were very interesting, and I kind of wish we got more backstory for them.
I know who you're talking about. I forgot what her name is.
But yeah, I liked Barbarians at the Gate.
There's also so many of them that I'm thinking of names and then I'm like, no. Or is it?
I do
The name
kind of...
I'm thinking about is Maria, but I don't think it's Maria.
I think Maria might have been the wife that was the fashion designer, not the wife that was the like not social media, the like advertising manager, the like press.
Was Maria? Maria is the one that lives in New Jersey, right, with the two sons?
Yes.
I think. I don't remember. I don't remember.
It got so complicated, and all the men have the same personality, but some of them like junk bonds and some of them don't.
It's so complicated. It's just so complicated.
I do kind of wish it came with like a family tree, but like a business tree diagram.
So cool.
That's my only complaint. And so hearing that there is a kind of index in one of the printings that has full descriptions and aliases of the characters does make me feel a bit better about it, because that was my only criticism outside of, I mentioned it earlier, the fact that there isn't a definition in what junk bonds are and why they're unstable. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I am kind of sad that it didn't go too much into the actual financing structure of how the deals worked, especially with what deal that turned out to be successful. Because I know it went into the general
Yeah.
like touches of this is a solid cash buyer, this is a leveraged stock shell buyer, this is a junk bond buyer. I do wish it kind of broke that down in more detail. And maybe that's not something the majority of the audience wanted, but when the final deal finished, I kind of wish it went back and said, this is where the characters ended up, and this is the bond that was bought out, and this is what happened to the company a few years down the line. And I did a little bit of that about talking about how Nabisco was broken off again from JRJ, and they ended up as separate companies before eventually being, I think JRJ got dissolved in the end. But I do wish I went into more detail on the structure of the bid the one, because I felt really ridiculous. But in the chapter where it's finally announced who won the buyout, I had to reread it because I couldn't tell which one it was, because it was just talking by the characters' names rather than the team they were representing, and it was all happening so quickly, which I felt a little bit silly for. But yeah.
No, that's true. I mean, yeah, it is. I wish. I like what the book did. Like I said, this is probably my favorite nonfiction book we've done so far.
Mhm.
Um, I do. It's kind of like with Lost Months with Light Eaters, where there's a few stuff that I want in there that is further than what the like idea of the book was. This book was to get you into that world and show you the interpersonal workings and like a bunch of like more of like that stuff and get you into the room with them and like have a I agree. I wish there was more of the actual financial stuff behind it and like a where everything ended up and how and like what's and the payment I wish all of that was in there. Also, I wish there was a little bit more clarity in some of the people because uh I still don't remember the wife's name.
Yeah.
Um that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
I feel like um and sometimes like we said I get lost between Paul and Paul.
Yeah.
Um
It did
so
feel like more could have potentially been done to differentiate them, even if it was just um because it was such a faithful adaptation. They didn't kind of create a associated palette for any of the characters. There wasn't really a theme about them outside of the mention
yeah,
of these are the JRJ Nabisco people who are from JRJ and want to stay in their small town, versus these are the Nabisco people that want to stay in this small town, versus these are the JRJ people who want private jets. Kind of outside of that split
yeah,
within the characters, there wasn't much associated language. Um, and I think if they'd have gone, it would be kind of difficult to balance it being a very like quoted interview based book and using that to associate it. But that's the only like
yeah,
tool I can think of that would have made it easier to keep track of characters. Um, I don't know.
yeah.
It's difficult when you have so many people. But
Yeah, the pain point of it is like if you wanted to do the one style, it removes back on like how closely this is just a telling from almost like from interviews and like a first hand perspective,
mhm.
and kind of very much not trying to even reword what they said and almost just retell exactly what each member said with like nicknames and just being like Paul,
I will
and you're
say,
like which
oh, incredible testimony
oh
to
yeah,
the journalists that they were able to get such a consistent
it's
retelling of
insane.
events by the amount of interviews they did. That is
It's
outstanding.
insane.
The version which I had, I don't know if this was there across all versions, it had footnotes on some of the pages for cases where they interviewed 3 or 4 participants and didn't get a consistent story. They would add a footnote and say there was slight variation on the story from these characters who
Yeah.
were told it this way. Incredible level of accuracy. I feel like they did more diligence than the people who were buying and selling the company. Um,
Yep.
But yeah,
It is insane.
I'm just slightly in awe of the journalistic work that had to be done for this book to be possible. But yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy. The amount of I'm in awe of them and how they pulled off this book.
I will say, I'm tempted to
Especially,
see if they write other books, because I'd be happy to read something else written by them. I think.
yeah, Brian Borrow
And
and
John Healer,
yeah,
dyslexia.
he, yeah, I
Helia,
don't know, Haler, Helyar,
yeah.
Helyar. I don't know. Hell yeah, that's his name now. Hell yeah. I don't know how you say his name.
There.
But yeah, I would be down to. Oh, he's written 13 books.
I was gonna say, I believe this was one of the first instances where journalists had taken time out of their job to write a book on the events they'd covered, but it turned out to be like a pretty big commercial success within the scope of non-fiction books in this genre. And so I believe they'd written other books, but I haven't looked at any of them specifically. I might have a look at some of them and nominate one of them next month for non-fiction, because I just really respected the diligence that went into it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a big
Okay,
deal in terms of non-fiction writers to trust them on.
you're not wrong.
But
You're really not wrong. I just saw one that I kind of would want to recommend because I kind of want to read it.
oh, what's it?
It's called Public Enemies: America's Greatest Crime Wave and the Birth of the FBI.
That does sound interesting. Oh gosh, we'll have to wait till next month. Now we've got our books for this month.
We do, and I'm actually really excited for this month's books.
So for
And
this
the extra
month,
books.
we have Blood River by Haven by Ella Wong, or Wang because it's German, and then we also have Modern Man in Search of a Soul by C.G. Jung. And for next month, I will mention it's going to be a just under 3 week book club this month. It's going to be like 3.5 weeks because we got delayed by 1 week by my ISP being bad. Everyone go boo hiss of Virgin Media. We will be meeting next time on the 17th of May, so there's 3.5 weeks instead of the usual full 4 weeks. But I figured if we just keep skedoodling it back, then we're gonna end up in a confusing, ambiguous point where we potentially have it in the first week of the next month if it happens again. And so I figured we just need to pick a point where we kind of hold the line, stay on the third Saturday of the month.
How many? I'm curious. How? We would only need to delay it like 3 times to get back to the first week.
I think it depends which month it falls into. But yeah.
That is true.
Because if it gets delayed, if it was somehow delayed 1 more week this month, for example, it would skip over into being in May, which would be very confusing. Right. So yeah, it just depends how the calendar falls. But yeah, the next one is going to be on the 17th of May, so a little bit of a speedier turnaround. But I believe the books are shorter than this month, which I'm honestly looking forward to a little bit. I'm sleepy.
Yeah, this month's one isn't very long.
Okay, I think.
Which is good, because that means me and Denya can read another book.
Yeah.
For unofficial.
I mean, honestly, at some point we're just gonna end up having like the book club plus podcast of you and me reading extra books. It's the inevitable way of life. This is the final form. But what are the chances that just becomes the Stormlight Archives?
Honestly, probably, because we can't read. We can't do.
We can't read
sequels.
Yeah.
We can't do sequels, so every time you read a sequel, I'm gonna reread it and be like, we're talking about it.
We're talking about it. You're not getting away this easily. I still haven't read the third book from the.
I know you haven't. I know you fucking have. I know you haven't. I know, and it makes me
I was so
sad.
annoyed at the end of the second book. We're talking about the Metalmancy series, Mistborn series, by Brandon Sanderson. There, I was annoyed at the second book, so I haven't read the third. But
And that annoys me.
but yeah, I think
Book 2 annoyed Daniel, not reading book 3 annoys Matt Kai. So we're in an issue here.
mhm. I think tentatively, that may be it for stream. Do you have any final thoughts? But I be sleepy.
Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
Was fun. I'm excited for the books.
Woo.
Thank you for the recommendations as well. I saw a few books on the recommendations that I haven't read before. Like, the... I forgot the series name. The Cozy Fantasy one that I've
Oh,
read, Wayfarers.
bu- 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 bu-
My brain...
uh,
It's on my to-be read.
a
This is why I have a
Psalms for
to-be
the
read.
Wild Built.
That.
I can
I
send you
knew
over the
about it,
lists.
but it... I knew about it, and I knew about Becky Chambers. Thank you for bringing it back up. Whoever did recommend it.
Yeah. Okay, I believe.
Because yes, I do read a lot of fantasy, but I don't read everything.
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll get there. I'll read every book in existence.
Okay, I think we are gonna read over to Toad, for I am sleepy and I need to do the dishes. The exciting end to stream. But yeah, I hope everyone had fun. I hope everyone enjoyed being here. I know there's a bit of an issue with the review form this month, which is why there weren't any present. But I'm gonna release them earlier next time, and also make Kai do tests to see if they're submitting. Yeah. So apologies for that. We will get that back on track next month. I hope everyone enjoyed, and I hope you're looking forward to the books for this month going forwards. And so I will be posting the stream schedule on Monday morning and the book announcements tonight. So keep an eye out for them. Bye 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 bye.